Obviously, just before we dive into the lifestyle and whatnot, let's just pull it back. So where were you actually born?
I was born in London, South London. So in a place called Carshalton.
Yeah.
Which is where my family live around there and where I grew up until I went off to uni.
What were you like when you were sort of growing up in that? Because obviously South London, very different to Bournemouth.
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of 10 minutes away from a rough area, but my area was super safe and super chilled and quite nice. So I've always, when you go to school and stuff and you're on the school buses, I was always exposed to a few different, I was kind of exposed to affluent people, but I was also exposed to people who were not like that at all. So I always had a taste of London and city and both sides of the spectrum.
What side were you on? Were you more from the affluent side or were you somewhere in the middle?
I was sort of in the middle in the sense of when I, we never had any money or anything, but I went to a good school in a nice area. So my school was quite posh, but they had people there who, almost boarding school kind of kids, but then they also had council estate kids.
Yeah.
So it was this quite nice melting pot of just you had a bit of everything, but it wasn't rough. It was nice, and it was in a really nice area. So I was never really, in amongst bad situations or anything like that. But then I also never really saw I didn't have friends who had loads of money and massive houses and stuff. But I actually went to school and our main sport was rugby. So when we used
that's weird.
Rugby? Yeah, they didn't play football.
That's so strange.
Yeah, and I was quite small actually when I was at school. Just really small and scrawny. So I wasn't I was good at it technically, but I wasn't, I didn't have the fucking build for it. But we used to, and with cricket actually, they used to take us to obviously the away games at the other schools, but we always used to go to really posh schools, schools where they film Hogwarts, Harry Potter and stuff, it's Christ College in Dulwich and Dulwich College and all these other ones, and you'd go in there and we'd get cooked meals for us, so I was always exposed to that. But then I lived just down the road from Croydon, which obviously everyone, wherever you go, people know Croydon. And that was a bit dangerous, to be honest. And I remember when I was growing up, people were getting stabbed and there was gang fights all the time. And
it's the ends.
Yeah, it was the original hood, really. So I've kind of been exposed to all of it, and I've always found myself comfortable in a room. I can go in a room with these really sort of posh, preppy venture capitalists, and then I can also go in a room with a group of kind of boys from the block who are making rap songs, and I feel fine. Yeah. I've always had that ability to sort of mix it with anyone.
It's when you're exposed to things at a young age, it just becomes natural. Do you know what I mean? It's through going through those experiences with some of the boys from the preppy schools like you mentioned, and some from the ends. It's just we'll just get on with both of them.
Yeah, I've got a mate. It's so silly actually. Funnily enough, it's the same mate I was telling you about on the way here. He's from the countryside, and he's not racist in the sense that he wishes any harm on anyone, but he's racist in the sense that he has this weird, he's scared to be around black people, for example, because he has this country mindset of never really seeing them, and then he only sees them portrayed in a certain way. And it's just so weird to me that I've traveled all around the world and I never even think about it really. It's because you're used to it. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
A funny thing actually, the only time in my life I've ever really acknowledged was I was on a flight to India, and it was a huge plane, and I was literally the only white person on the flight, and it was the first time in my life I ever realised I'd never been a minority like that before. And it kind of gave me a weird sense of what it might be like for somebody else.
Yeah, perspective from the other side.
Yeah, it was really strange, and it didn't impact the way I felt, but I felt oh shit,
it's a thing in your head.
Yeah, you just realise it. And this is how people must feel when they go to a school and they're the only Asian kid or Arab kid or black kid in the school, and you wouldn't even have that experience unless you're on the receiving end.
And you never get that experience because you're rarely on the receiving end. Cal, you went over to Asia, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to Asia.
And you had a similar experience, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a I had a terrible experience, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we went to, so with my girlfriend, we went to, we travelled around Asia, but specifically went to Singapore. And I don't know if you've ever been to Singapore.
I have actually, yeah.
So in Singapore, they've got little pockets of different cultures. So they've got like a Chinatown, they've got Little India. So me and my girlfriend went to Little India. And so she's blonde and like fair skin. So not really a generic Indian girl. So we went in there and we were in the courtyard where we're looking to get some lunch. And I was just like minding my business, looking around, like thinking that I'm going to grab a curry or something. And she's nudging me going, like, I feel really weird in here. I feel really weird in here. And I was like, oh, no, it's all right. It's all right. Like not even taking any notice of what's going on. And then I slowly start to attune to what's happening. I was thinking like all these Indian men are like staring at my girlfriend, but there's at least 200 of them there. There's
200 is mad.
Honestly, there's about
how intense is that?
That's
circled around.
Yeah,
like.
And it's in a courtyard, so it's in like it's literally in a square, and we're in the middle,
surrounded.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing is, it's like it sounds like I'm sort of making up a story, but we were surrounded.
Yeah,
I don't know if they purposely were surrounding us, but like that's what it was like. So I'm sort of stood there looking around, thinking like, oh, this is a bit weird.
Yeah.
She starts panicking, so I like grab her hand and we just start trying to walk out. And mate, they start following us.
Oh, so it was
in
legit.
Groups. It was legit, and not only were they following us, they were. I don't know how this is a thing or if this is even a thing in Indian culture, but they were hissing at us, making snake noises, and then like getting in our faces.
Really?
So mate, I just ran straight out, and then so we got out of there, and my girlfriend.
That might be like a sacred, not like sacred, but that might be like their community. Like I feel like.
The thing is, have you been to Ibiza?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
You know, there's those birds on the streets, and they like hiss at you.
No, they make dog noises at you. They whiff at you.
Yeah.
They make animal noises.
Well, yeah, that's
but aren't they brassy?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that in Barcelona as well.
Have
like
you?
These like transsexual prostitutes, and they do that. They like hiss at you and stuff.
It's weird.
It's like animalistic. It's so strange.
It is, but it probably taps into something internal. Do you know what I mean?
That must have been so horrible though, like with your missus, because it's like
mad.
if there's 200 people there, you're actually defenseless.
Exactly, and in all seriousness, it crossed my mind that I'll have to fight to the death if it comes to it. That's in my head.
And it doesn't
Obviously.
matter like what you're capable of. There's 200, you can't
Yeah,
win.
I know. And so
How many do you reckon you could fit in?
in that situation,
They're usually quite slender as well, so you can take more than
there was
one.
all sorts of shapes and sizes there, mate.
Oh really? The whole
I
mix
think that, like, not being in that situation now, but when I think about it, I could probably take on a lot more than what I'd say now.
Yeah.
So I'd say like 5 now, but in this situation,
yeah.
probably about like 10. But anyway,
Five's a reasonable number.
I mean, sitting here saying 5 is still pretty impressive.
Yeah, 5's decent.
the thing is, like, we made it out. I say we made it out, like we just walked out, but they were still following us. Anyway, we got out of Little India, and I was just really cautious. Like, I was looking around for like the rest of the time we're in Singapore, like just looking around whilst I was with her. But obviously, it's because she's fair skin and blonde hair, and they don't have those girls in India.
Yeah.
So frequently when we were traveling as well, we used to go on TripAdvisor to look at reviews of places. And there was loads and loads of TripAdvisor reviews about Little India, about blonde, fair-skinned girls going there and having the exact same experience. Literally, like, rating it like 1 star, saying, do not go if you are blonde hair, fair skin. The men are creepy. Do not go.
Do you know what's actually strange? And I've realised this now, having a girlfriend, is like women, one, they're way more paranoid for good reason. But they're also way more like attuned to danger.
Yeah,
they've got like a more like instinctive sense of it, and like you said, you're probably just nonchalantly just eating your curry or thinking about, well, what do I fancy?
I'm looking for chicken korma, I think.
Yeah, like for me, and I have the same problem. I've been all around the world as well, and you know, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you feel like, you know, this feels a little bit sort of weird,
shady,
like a little bit like. I remember I was in Hong Kong and I went down the street and I was like, I don't know, I've got a bit of a feeling about this. So
it's the energy, isn't it?
You do get it, but as a girl, like that's a whole different thing.
Heightened.
And you know, I had a scenario with one of my friends, and we were kind of having a bit of a debate about it because there was his sister got like approached or attacked or something on a tube, and he was like, "Oh, if that was me, I'd have just like as the girl, my sister, I would have just hit him or told him to fuck off or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, but mate, it's not. That's not how they think. Like you're like a 6'3" built like black bloke,
yeah,
and these are like little 5'6", if that, slender little girls who, you know, they can't defend themselves in the same way. And when you start thinking about that, you start taking into appreciation, like your girlfriend might have even saved your lives, to be honest, because she picked up on that energy sooner than you would have.
Mate, the things that were going through my head when I was thinking like, are they going to steal her?
This could turn sour.
Yeah, I was thinking like anything could happen. And
there's no one there to help.
Yeah.
There's no one there to help.
That's why I said that in my head. I was thinking like, I'm going to have to fight to the death.
It's so weird you had that experience in Singapore though, because I mean, I only went to Singapore for 2 days, but I thought it was amazing. And I obviously didn't go into those areas. I just saw the architecture and...
I had no idea where I was going, so I could potentially have walked into, you know, like a really dodgy place with it. Yeah. I didn't really know where I was going. I was just wandering through.
I've never really had it where I felt, I guess, like not comfortable in like a foreign city, but I've only really been to like touristy places. But like somewhere like that, where it's like there's no other tourists, I can imagine you felt like proper isolated.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Because you got no pals or like no one that's like.
I think as well, like when you've got a missus or a family member or something, you're not just thinking for yourself.
You're responsible.
And I said this to my girlfriend recently because we almost got in a situation, and I said to her, look, like you have to understand that I can choose to fight or run, and I can think for myself, and I'll face the consequences either way. But when I'm with you, I can't run, so now I've got to fight. But also I can't just fight. I've got to be looking over to try and protect you, and then by protecting you, I'm now distracted. Like, and they don't understand that as well. Like they have a better sense of danger, but then they have a like less of a logical mind about how it plays out.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in a sketchy place like that, not only are she the one drawing the attention, but she's also going to freeze in that moment. She's not going to know how to like logically get out of it. And it is a weird thing that you become more sort of accustomed to danger and the threat that it poses when you're around girls, because they, you know, you have to, I find myself moving into like more of a protective frame.
It's normal though, isn't it? Especially in like circumstances where it's required.
Yeah.
It's just like unconscious. You just step into that role. But just to pull back, obviously, you know, when you are growing up, what are you like?
What, as a person?
Well, yeah, like just in general.
Like I said, my background wasn't one way or the other. It was just quite normal. Like we didn't really have money or anything, but I didn't necessarily have like a negative experience as such. Like I wasn't like in a rich school and I'm like the council estate kid that you're made to feel like that. It wasn't like that. I was just pretty like, you know, run of the mill, I guess. But I was always like intelligent and academic, and I was always sporty.
Were you into music at that point?
Nah, not really. And actually, funnily enough, like a lot of musicians that I've met, like a lot of their influences come from the music that their parents play. But I actually don't think that my parents had like a real signature sound. Like I think it was just the radio was just on. So I don't think I was ever really exposed to music until my teenage years. And I think the first music that I really clicked with, weirdly, was like dubstep.
Dubstep, I remember dubstep.
Yeah. I think I was about 13 or 14, and
you used to like dubstep.
I was about to say similar age, about 13, 14. I used to listen to dubstep.
How old are you now?
Just about to turn 28.
28, yeah.
It's the same age, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I used to, because this was at the same time where like you had computers and internet. And you used to have like the dial-up modem.
Bit of LimeWire.
You couldn't have like the home phone and the internet on at the same time.
Standard,
so we had a computer in our house, and it just became like this fixture that everyone was obsessed with. And when I had my turn, obviously good old LimeWire, but you would just be on YouTube and you just find like dubstep remix of Rihanna or something.
Yeah, they were the best.
I was never on it.
The remixes of the
you used to
songs.
Love it.
Yeah, I did. What even happened to dubstep? I don't even
still
hear
going.
it.
It's still going.
It fell off, didn't it?
Yeah,
it definitely fell off.
It had a little 1 year stint.
Do you know what? It's weird because like every genre goes in cycles. The music industry, fashion, everything is cyclical. And I actually was with like a very big artist a couple of days ago, and we were having a conversation, and apparently it's 13 years. Like every 13 years.
It's weird because we had someone on the podcast, and you know, he's a big DJ, and he literally said the same thing. He said everything's in cycles, but I think he said every 10 years.
Yeah,
it just comes full circle, because he's saying about, what was he saying? Was it disco cow?
Yeah,
talking about disco. How disco's having like a reimmerse. Yeah.
Same with like garage.
Garage is the one though, isn't it?
Garage is just fun. The only problem with garage, the garage that we all know and love, is those guys are older now. They're in their like 40s and they're still about, but like there's been no new songs.
No, it's no new garage. It's like
There's
garage. It's a hybrid of garage and rap.
There's no new old school garage.
Yeah.
They've got this UKG thing, which is like fast house music.
Yeah.
But that's not the thing we like. We like the Ollie Ollies and like the Artful Dodger
the mellow,
kind of stuff.
like the melodies and
the
like
groove,
the nice
like
tunes.
it's garage just has its own thing, and you know that. Funnily enough, coming from London, you're just more exposed to rap and garage and stuff like that. And
do you think garage will ever come back?
well, it did. It did a few years ago.
Not to the same extent, right?
Not to the same extent, but I feel like similar with dubstep and similar with everything, it comes back, but in like a new form. And like, for example, the old garages are like really like rough and tough, and now the new garage, although I don't like it as much, is way more like clean and polished. And it's the same with disco, and it's the same with everything. Like, it will just keep coming back, but with the new instruments, the new softwares, and you know, the kids now, they're born with an iPhone. Like, I remember I've got like a younger sister because my dad had a kid with somebody else, and she's 11, and I think she was like 5 and she got given an iPhone, and now they probably get them even earlier.
Would you give your son or daughter an iPhone at 5?
Well, like immediately you just say no, but then I thought about this the other day actually, and you've kind of got a choice to make, because if you don't give your kid the technology, they're gonna fall behind.
Yeah.
And like the way we're moving is everything is digital. Like we have the benefit of our age. I always feel like being the golden generation, because when I was a kid, there wasn't the internet.
Sweet spot, mate.
There was no smartphones, and we grew up with the advancement of tech. But the kids who are born now, they don't know anything other than just this like digital world. So they don't have the context of whether it's too much, or whether it's good, or whether it's bad, or what they're deprived of in the real world. I think to a degree you can't fight it. Like, it's so much bigger than us now. Like, it's the whole way of life. We're sitting here now, like, recording something to put out on a digital platform. And
it's true, mate. I'm going to ask you a mad question. I can't help but ask it, but like, do you not think it's too coincidental when we were born?
in a sense of what? I love a conspiracy theory, so I'm ready for it. But
mate, don't get Jack started on conspiracy theories.
No, we'll be here for 5 or 6 hours, I think.
Is it? I just find it extremely weird that I was born in the same year as the internet. I'm like, that to me is mad. Like, I'm like, that. I don't know why that seems so iconic to me, but I'm like, timing wise, simulation wise, I'm like, there is potentially a parallel.
I think I definitely have, maybe not like intuition, but I definitely have these feelings that like things are like meant to be a certain way because of that. I've never actually thought I was born in 1993 because that's when the internet was made, but I do experience weird sort of things sometimes that,
Like,
you know, like making you just, I don't know what the word is, but like you have these sort of parallels or these moments of realization when something,
like deja vu.
yeah, like you realize that you could have only been, or even just talking about timing in general, maybe not as deep as like, oh, I was born in a simulation at this point, but like even my business, I explained this to someone the other day who wants to set up an event business, and I was like, although I believe that I would have always made it a success, it's so down to just luck and timing, and you can be in the right place at the right time. And you know, with my industry, it can rain, and or like the train strikes come or something happens like that. You could have had everything perfect, but just one weird thing out of your control can determine the success of it. And maybe that could have happened on the first day I ever did my event, and it would have never taken off. But it did happen, and that is down to a bit of luck and chance as well. So I do think sometimes that you're just meant to be, whether you meet people or an opportunity comes by being in like a weird place that maybe you're meant to go out for dinner with someone and you just feel you're in bed and you can't bother to go, and you go just because you want to like not let them down,
could happen of
and
it.
then you meet someone that changes your life, like your wife or business partner, and those kind of things. I think like I was meant to do that, like I was meant to be there.
But on that, so maybe not simulation to that extent, and the internet is just like one variable that I'm like taking into consideration with that, but like, does it never just feel like everything is already planned out to you? Do you know what I mean? Like with those certain events that you're talking about, you're like, oh, I could have gone there, but I went there, and then this happened, then this happened, then but like, you're always gonna go.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence with whether the whole thing's already planned out, and I'm just like falling into it because I like the idea of controlling my own destiny. I don't like the idea. I hate the idea of not being in control, and like I always because I have a lot of belief in myself, and I always believe that like I always know best, but I know given any circumstance that I'm probably going to make like a pretty good decision. Don't get me wrong, like you do stupid things sometimes, but I feel like if you put me in a situation, I'm probably going to come out of it good, because I know I'm competent and I'm intelligent and I'm aware of, I can tell my hand to stuff. So I like the mentality that I can influence my own outcome rather than it being predetermined.
Yeah, but do you not think it's a slightly liberating feeling, thinking that if you are the type of person who, you know, will always get on with it and will probably always make the right decision,
It'll just work itself out.
It'll work itself out in the right manner because you believe in yourself.
Well,
you know.
Yeah, I believe that it will all be all right, but I don't believe it necessarily to the extent that it's already predetermined and therefore it's written and it'll be fine. I believe it like, look, I rate myself and back myself enough to know that I will never be homeless or not never be homeless, but as in it will always be okay.
That in itself will probably mean that it is always going to be okay, right?
By definition, like,
do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
because you have that mindset, and I say this to a lot of friends and stuff as well. Like I've always felt like, because I love to travel and I love to, you know, I used to have like a Range Rover and stuff before I moved to the city, and at the time, I couldn't necessarily afford that, but I just wanted it. Like I just felt like that's what I wanted, and I've always done things and then been like, I'll just figure it out, and I've never not figured it out. And I always said to my mates, like, should we go to, you know, let's go to Ibiza or Amsterdam or wherever it may be in like 7 months. And they're like, oh, I won't be able to afford it. I'm like, well, you won't with that attitude, because you're already basically saying I'm not going to be in a position to make enough money to make it work. Whereas for me, I'm like, all right, it's going to cost me $3,000 and I don't have $3,000 to put towards it today, but I've got 7 months. Like, and then you break it down, you're like, it's only like 350 quid a month and I'm already making that, but I could just go and do one extra thing and then make it. So I've always had this idea that I can get anything I want and I'll figure it out, and you'll just rise to the challenge.
Do you think it also ties in with the fact that once you make a decision and commit and there's no going back, you have to figure it out?
But that's the thing, it's like, if you put yourself in a position, it will just happen. Like it has to. Or worst case scenario, and I learnt this earlier last year for something big that happened, like, or it just won't. And then what? Like, you'll just carry on.
Exactly. Foiboy, what do you think, mate? Do you think this is all predetermined? Or do you think we have free choice, or do you think we have the perception of free choice?
Oh, that's like two different questions.
It's the same. That's the same question,
but
just a different side of it.
Yeah. I'd say on the whole free choice thing as well, it's quite difficult because the choices that you make, I think, are heavily determined on the exposure that you have to different things. So sort of like content you watch or people you hang around with, and the information that you're taking in probably sometimes predetermines some decisions you make. So the whole free choice thing, I think, is a bit of like I am a little bit on the fence with that. But in terms of the whole predetermined thing, whether life's planned out, I'd like to say that I don't think it is.
So do you believe in destiny?
Yeah, but I was about to say, but sometimes I think some things happen and in my head I'm thinking like how has that happened, or
that had to happen.
How has this happened?
Well,
like you said, timing and luck.
But you can wish it upon yourself, like, not like, oh, I want a 4-bedroom house, so I'm going to do my affirmations and have a vision board, and now I've got a 4-bedroom house. More like you're willing yourself on to achieve. Like, you might just say, like, I know I'm going to be successful. It doesn't mean that you have a specific, defined, quantifiable version of success necessarily. But if you just always go through life with the idea that you will be, I don't see how you can't be.
Yeah.
I hear you, but I'm completely with you. No, I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know, because like it baffles me that we're on a flying rock in space in the Milky Way galaxy with 50,000 Earth-like planets alone in it.
Yeah,
that in itself, I'm like, how does that happen?
The thing is, though, once you start going down that route, it's an infinite question, and you can just lose.
It's a rabbit hole. There's no coming back.
Can lose. I feel like if you just feel like, do you know what? It's pre-written anyway. You lose a bit the fire in your belly.
That's true.
And if you keep asking these questions, obviously you need to do soul searching, you need to explore the meaning of life and all these other things. But I feel like if you dwell on it for too long, you have this realization that there's no fucking way I'm gonna know.
So I'm actually gonna throw something in the mix, mate. This is a little curveball for you. So I used to be like that, and I used to think that everything was free choice. My mum went and saw a medium, and like the medium, this is like 3, 4, 5 years ago, or 5 years ago or something, and the medium told my mum certain things and told her not to warn me, but my mum tried to warn me about certain things that would come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I was flying, mate. So I was like, shut up, mum, as if, like, give it a rest. And she also told my mum some certain things about my personal life, which I haven't even told my mum. And it all came to fruition, every single piece of it. So then my mum goes and sees her like 2 years later. And she asks about me. And my mum tells her, do you want me to read his cards again? And my mum says, yeah. She tells my mum some more stuff. Now this time, because obviously I'm very cautious about the situation because things actually came to fruition.
Yeah.
She tells my mum certain things which are external to it. There's no possibility of my mum knowing about it. One thing in particular as well, and I can't say it on the podcast, but she says about one thing in particular that my mum has no clue about. And like, it's not a generic thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific. It's a very specific person. You can put 2 and 2 together, and it was bang on. And like, from that moment, and she also said a couple of other things about the business and what I'd need to do moving forward, and it's all come true.
Yeah.
So from that moment, I'm like, that thing there,
Has that swayed your decision?
I'm like, that thing there, if that didn't happen, I would be just like you two. But then when I hear that, I'm like, how does she know all that?
But you know what? The things you say that I'm into that as well. Like, I've seen psychics even recently, to be honest. My mum's seen psychics, and there is just a lot of it, especially when you walk away from it and you reflect on what was said. A lot of it, like I went to a psychic recently, and then I thought she was really good, so I actually set her up, one with my mum and one with my sister and one with one of my friends. And when I asked them all, like, we were talking about all of their things, there was so many like common themes.
Generic.
She was like, you're gonna go to Dubai, you're gonna do this, and I was like, yeah, fucking hell, I am actually doing some shit in Dubai, so like that's spot on. And then later I was like, my sister's also going to Dubai, my mum's going to Dubai, my friend's going to Dubai, and I was like, nah, it's bollocks.
Yeah.
But then there's like things that she just went out of nowhere, like an exact name and a person and a thing. I'm like, what the fuck?
That, but like, doesn't like that in itself to me feels like there's another side to the coin.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
If you think that someone, because when they do that psychic stuff, they're tapping into like a family member who's dead or whatever, and like it makes you think, are they sitting in the spirit world, and they can, maybe when you die you can see all the timelines, and they're like warning you that they can see your story pre-written, or is it more just like a general energy direction that you're going down? It's almost like the exact details are not predetermined, but the route you're going is going to end up in that direction unless you do something about it. But then, can you even do anything about it? Like,
That's what I'm saying.
If your mum says to you, your son's going to play football and his leg's going to fall off, you could stop playing football, but is your leg going to still fall off anyway?
Yeah, that's so true.
And you'll never know either way, because
it's like a never-ending discovery though with it. So my family, a few of my family members went to one as well, and so this is what made me jump to one side of the fence, and I had to hop over all the time and end up sitting on the fence. But so you obviously know that my brother's like a reckless driver. Like,
yeah, he is.
Terrible driver.
Mario Kart vibes.
My mum goes to see one, and they end up saying to my mum, he also at that time got a new car, a new black Mercedes specifically, and the medium ended up saying to my mum, like, your son's got a new car, and he hasn't posted anything on the internet, because you hear people like posting stuff on the internet, then the medium catches onto that, and then nothing was on the internet, so I can't really see how she would have known. And she ended up saying to my mum that your son's got a new black Mercedes and he needs to be careful of his reckless driving. And like,
that's too specific.
That's what I mean.
It's weird,
how specific that is did make me think. Also made me want to go to one. I've never been to one yet.
I'm scared, mate.
That's exactly why I've never been to one.
I feel
that is
like
exactly why I haven't been to one.
They don't tend to give you like bad
energy.
News.
Yeah.
They tend to give you good news or like advice. They won't tell you specifics necessarily that are like, they won't say you're going to have a car crash.
I don't know if I have what do they call it? Is it like main character syndrome? you know that, like,
everyone has
I
that,
feel like
surely.
I have it, like
the star of the movie.
Like, genuinely,
Yeah,
I feel like if I went,
but you are. I have this thought process, like, it is my story, it is my world, and I've always liked living in buildings where I'm like quite high up and you can look over the city.
Yeah.
I had it in Bournemouth, I had it in Manchester as well, And I always think like there's like millions of people out there who have no idea that I exist or that I'm looking at them right now, and they all have the exact same experience that I'm having for themselves. And it is a twister for your mind, but at the end of the day, like my experience of life I am okay. I was going to get real deep in my like crazy thought process.
Do it, mate.
But I've always, when you think about religion, think about God, I've always had this idea that I am God, because no one else can be, because I am me and this is my existence. And I've always felt like we are all, you know, how in the body you've got all these like cells, and you've got all these like red blood cells, white blood cells, and they're all running around working to make the body tick and to fight off infections and doing all these other kind of things. And I always feel like the world is like a body, and like we are all the little cells inside it. And if we all do bad things, the body gets sick. So like if you look at the planet now, there's like pollution and people are like doing bad things to each other, and there's wars and there's all these other things. And it's like, imagine like you've got like an infection in your body and like all the cells are fighting each other, or you start to eat bad, or whatever you do, take drugs or whatever, your body starts to deteriorate. And if you look at the planet, like it's falling apart. And I feel like we are part of a bigger body.
Yeah.
Like we are our own cell and our own God, but then also we are part of an organism, like a living organism, and everything you do impacts the greater scene. So if you live bad, all you're actually doing is like killing your own body. Like it's always been this weird idea of how I've tried to conceptualize it, but
it does make a little bit of sense. Do you also think that the idea that the energy that you put out, so like the energy you put out, me, Jack, all the energy that gets put out obviously gets recycled back to us as well?
Well, they call it like the butterfly effect, don't they? Where it's like a butterfly somewhere in the world will flap its wings,
like the
and
film.
That tiny bit of air that it flaps somehow impacts. Like for example, you know, you said about the destiny. Like I come here, and when I had my haircut booked for 10 o'clock, right? I got there like 3 or 4 minutes late, but someone else had already got in the chair. So then now I'm going to be like half an hour pushed back. And then I come here and it's all good. But maybe if I had been on time, when I walked out the barber's across the road to see you guys get hit by a car, and maybe now I don't get hit by a car because my barber cut someone else's hair first. So like, and again, you're never going to know the answer to that.
But I think it's the way you look at it. So if you look at it like that, it's a nice way to look at it. And then you could look at it from the other side as well. So if you are able to see it that basically you're seeing the positive in the situations, even though it's not a negative situation that's happened, but you're thinking something could have happened, or this could have happened, or that could have happened. But just to touch back on the whole energy situation, do you think that you take your spirit with you after, and then it gets... Now this is almost a question of the afterlife.
Yeah.
Because I've spoken to a few people, and a few people think that the energy you put out, whether it's good or bad, you take that good spirit or bad spirit with you into the afterlife. And
is that what you think? That sounds like a leading question.
It does sound like this is how I feel. Do you agree?
No, I am interested because obviously what you've just said sort of relates to that sort of thing. So
I mean, yeah, I'm not like fully decided on what happens when you die, but I do think, I think that life is infinite, and I think that here's another one of my mad theories, right? So I had this idea that, let's say there's 7 billion people on the planet, that you will live 7 billion lives. So like you will, right now I'm me and I have my quality of life and I have my appearance and I have whatever. But then for me to truly understand life, I need to live in someone else's shoes that is a different color or a different culture or a different height or has a different amount of money or whatever. And like the only way you can truly like ascend is to experience every shade of life. And I always think it's just so weird, but like at some point in your experience you'll be a murderer, and at some point like you'll live life in a prison and you'll have to learn that experience. And I think it's actually a theory that you basically go through life and you have to make mistakes and learn, and then on your next life you can choose to like be better with those lessons or do something bad.
So that almost links to the theory that you take the previous life with you into the next one.
It's but you don't know about it.
Yeah, of course.
But you know there's like stories of like kids who have been born and then they're like oh, I was killed in the past life and this is where I was buried. And then they like go into the site and they find like the kid who disappeared. Like there is definitely, back to the psychic thing, like as much as you want to be sort of clinical and logical and rational about life, there are just things like that. Like
it's too complex. Like the humans have been around for 50,000 years. Like that's mad. Like it's too much to it to just, this is how it goes from here to here, and this is the ending.
Well, here's a question, if I'm going to take over the podcast, ready? So the ultimate question is, where did humans come from? Because is it evolution, or is it a god, or is it something else? Because
mate, I was literally watching a short clip on YouTube about like how it was aliens. And after I watched it, I was like, that sounds plausible.
What, the aliens put us here kind of thing? Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
But I think it's just evolution. Personally, I think that, you know, just like cells that have just evolved over time and you know, evolved into where we're at today.
Like when you like even I went to a physio the other day and I had like a knot in my back, and he was telling me about how these tiny little muscles behind your shoulder blades are obviously that small because you need like a greater range of motion. And when you learn about the anatomy and these tiny little features or characteristics of a body part that are so specifically like that because it has to serve another purpose.
Yeah.
And it's just, when you think about the complexity of it, you're like, how has that happened? Like, and you know, obviously you adapt to your climate and stuff, and
simulation.
Oh, it's mental. It's but you go around in circles.
Yeah, I know, mate, and it's a never-ending convo. Let's just pull back. Obviously, dubstep enters your life at 13, 14. Is that when you first started like getting into music properly? Then I take it.
No, literally not even. To be honest, I really came into like music and music industry really late. So obviously, the dubstep thing and just like YouTube videos, and that was probably my first exposure to dance music, but it hadn't really clicked yet.
So what was the plan at that point?
No plan.
I mean, I was just a kid, innit? I was just at school. I do remember though that I was in like maybe year 8, and we started doing business studies. And I remember like the first day of business studies, we put into groups on the tables, and we were given we had to come up with like a business idea. And I came up with this idea, and it's so weird because this is 15 years ago. And I was a 13-year-old kid, and I came up with this idea of making like a carbon emissions offsetting business. Like, it's so strange to come up with that of all things. And I was going to be we were making certificates and we were making wristbands, and we were going to plant trees, and being like, if you bought a wristband, we'll plant a tree, and then you're like doing your bit. And then also for businesses, we were going to businesses and give them a certificate to show that they're like offsetting their carbon emissions by planting 100 trees or whatever. And I had that idea when I was like 13, and I remember in the classroom, we had like 4 or 5 of us in the group, and I remember like leaving the classroom and being like, you lot are not doing it, I'm just going to actually do this. And I remember like actually going and getting these wristbands made, and I just remember being hooked on business. Like, it was my favourite subject at school. I just loved it. I loved the idea of like bringing something to life. So I always just thought, I'm a businessman, like that's what I'm gonna do. Music thing was literally not even in the picture until I turned 18. So yeah, I was just going through school. Like I said, I was quite academic. I was in a school where it was always like the cycle, you're just going to go to uni. Like, it was quite a good school. So like, you know, you were in that sort of framework. And life was pretty, you know, as a kid, it's pretty simplistic, isn't it, really? But when I was 16, the year of my GCSEs, my parents broke up, and it all ended in some massive bang, and it was like super dramatic.
Have a knock-on effect on you?
It has to. You know?
Of course.
Yeah, it has to. It was like really crazy. But I remember it was almost like a release of tension, and my mum kind of come on this idea of like, we're just going to be super chilled and we're not going to have rules and all these other kind of things. But I kind of, you know, exploited that, not in like a bad way, but I started not going into school because I just couldn't be fucked. And like, I'd go into school, and then the school were sort of having like these counsellors, and they would say stuff to me like, you know, if you're ever angry, you know, you can just walk out the class and take a breather. And I was like, I'm just sitting in my English class like, yeah, I'm just going to go for a walk. Because like, you know, you can't do stuff like that unless you're like the really naughty kid at school. And I kind of started to take my foot off the gas, and I ended up doing like 1 year of sixth form, and I dropped out, and then I went to like a college, and then I remember like on my first day of college smoking weed for the first time, and then we basically just never went back to college.
Yeah, just bonging it out.
Yeah, like just like, you know, it's just this thing. You're like 17 and
Standard, mate.
just
Hit the bongs.
someone just.
Yeah.
Oh no, the bong definitely didn't come out at that stage.
Oh, really?
No, I don't think I hit a bong until I came to uni.
I swear, like every lad that like goes through it, it's like 16 to like 18, maybe 19.
Hit
And
it hard.
It's just the easiest like bad thing to get hold of, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like everyone's got like an older brother or someone who's like a drug dealer, and then like someone just gets weed, or someone's got like a family that's like real laid back and they're allowed to do it or whatever, and then they're like the cool kid. And I remember like being at college, we met this group of boys and we went back to his house, and his parents didn't care, and we were there for like 5 or 6 days.
Yeah,
like,
mate, that was my house.
Oh, you were that guy. You were the guy.
We always used to get. Why was
In
weed
the
so
garage.
cool back in the
Mate,
days? I always think about it, and
Mate, you know what it is.
Do you know what,
when
'cause
you
you
first
smoke
started
it.
smoking weed, there's no arguing it. It's fucking fun.
yeah,
Mate,
It's so fun.
so funny.
You laugh.
Everything's fun.
Laugh. You eat, and you sleep.
Yeah, yeah, and you're just doing it with the boys.
Yeah,
so like,
it's
it's just
jokes.
fucking funny,
No,
mate.
at that time, that was amazing. Like I loved weed. But when I grew up, and I can't touch it now.
It's because it'll make you fucking
Paranoid,
lazy.
and
Yeah.
you're out and you don't do nothing, and you're lethargic.
Wasn't it weird when people were telling you that you would experience that when you were like 16 or 17, and you were like, nah, that's never going to happen to me. I'll smoke green for the rest of my
I'm
life.
laughing every single time. I mean, we did it. It must have been about 3 or 4 years ago, and I just get really self-reflective.
Yeah,
introspective.
It breaks down my ego that gives me like false opinions of things I'm doing in my life. It breaks those barriers down, and then it gives me like a true reflection of it. And sometimes I don't actually like it.
No.
It's almost like it's almost like you should do it maybe occasionally
Every
because,
3 months,
well,
6 months.
because it does break.
I know the feeling you're discussing, but I like mushrooms. And I have the same feeling, but I always find that like a really super positive experience because I learn so much, and these ideas in my subconscious about little things like, I probably should have dealt with that situation better, or come on, Connor, like get yourself in the gym. But when I smoke weed, it's that, but it's like bad.
Negative.
It makes me feel really like
horrible,
bad about it.
Yeah.
And I remember like actually being in Bournemouth in the summer, and I smoked weed at this girl's house, and I remember being like, all right, I'm gonna go now. And I like got out and I cycled there, and I was cycling down the street in Charminster, and I felt like there was these spirits chasing me or something, or like people that were chasing me, and it was like, I can't be doing this.
Paranoia.
Honestly, I really don't enjoy it.
No.
Like now, if I smoke green, I don't have a good experience. Like even if I'm with like friends that do have a good experience,
Nah.
like I will mask it, but I'm still thinking about my actions and I'm still thinking about, mate, honestly, that I'm a failure. That comes into my mind.
Do you know what it is though?
a
Because
lot.
you know you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And also like the whole thing about weed is like you're a bum kind of thing if you do it, and that introspectiveness just frames it in that way.
But it's also what Cal said about like the fact that like it kind of removes like the mirror,
Yeah.
and then like you just have to be with yourself, and it's like, actually I'm not really doing what I should be doing there, or I'm not reaching the potential I should be there, or do you know what, that behavior towards that person in that moment was really wrong on me. I always get it about like my girlfriend. I'm like, like
But
I probably should have reacted differently there.
You know when you do drugs sometimes like that, and people who you're with are better at it, and they're like, just go with the flow, and it's like, but I can't because I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I think that you could smoke weed on like an amazing day and be fine, or if you're busy at work and stressed at work or something's going on, you'll have a bad trip.
Of course.
And it's just drugs is just a more heightened, accentuated experience. You know how they say like money makes you more of what you already are.
Yeah.
It's like the same with drugs. Like
100%.
people take coke and they turn into dickheads, but they're not. They are dickheads, and it just brings it out of them.
or it's just like it heightens your current experiences of life.
Yeah.
So for example, like if you do have like something at work that needs to be done and you're not doing it, like that will be prominent because that's actually at the focal point of your mind. It's
and
just
maybe you're doing drugs to take your mind off of it, and actually that's why, like if I go on holiday, I struggle to relax because I feel guilty that I'm not doing my work. And I think it's the same thing. If you're like, fucking, I've had a really stressful day, I've got loads to do, let me just smoke a joint. You're smoking a joint to chill out, and then you're like, oh my god, what have I done? Like, and you feel so bad about all the work you've got. And
oh mate, I actually think weed's lame. I can't help it. I just think it's lame. I get why people smoke it, and I understand that, and I can appreciate that. But like for me personally, it's just a lame experience. I just don't enjoy it at all anymore. But when I was younger,
it was amazing.
It was fucking unreal, mate.
And those days, like when we were just smoking, you could smoke as much weed as was available, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And like a guy would drive around, and you'd chip in 3 of you on a tenner, and like it was an amazing day, amazing night.
Yeah. Did you also used to think when you smoked weed that you were so much better at activities you were doing? Because we used to play five-a-side football every Friday, and before five-a-side football, we'd probably have a few bongs, and then we go there.
I think we're sick,
and we would think we were so. We get back and be like, mate, we were sick tonight.
No, weed's not really been like a performance enhancer for me.
For nobody,
it's not.
By the way, I'm not actually saying that I was better. I'm saying
no,
I used to think
it was the illusion. It was the illusion.
Trust me.
Well, no, I think 100% creatively. Like if you're on drugs, like music just clicks, and you can, ideas flow.
Music sounds so much better on weed.
It does.
It does. It's weird.
Yeah,
I actually have a really funny story. I was on tour. I was in Newcastle, and I'd had like a crazy stressful experience. And one of the DJs, he had this like weed vape pen, and I was asking him about it. And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's like weed pen." And he was like, "Yeah, go on, try it." And I was like backstage, and I was like, and he was like, "No, you have to like really suck it and like keep going." And I was like. And then I swear to God, within about 15 seconds, it was like bang.
Blasted.
And I was going through the club like crazy paranoid. Had to run because I needed a shit. Like it was just, my whole body was like panicking. And then like after like 30 minutes of splashing my face, I came onto the stage, but it was like the music was vibrating differently through my body. And I was like, oh my God, this is really nice.
It cuts deep, doesn't it, the music?
It does.
Yeah, you start listening to J. Cole and you're in your feelings.
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, especially if the content of it is like thought-provoking.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, if it's lyricism and it's just like relatable, you're like, cool, like that's hitting home.
Those you have those artists who are just proper like stoners artists. Like the weed's made for people who smoke. The music's made for people who smoke weed.
Usually those American chilled rappers.
Yeah.
They're the ones.
Wiz Khalifa, he had a whole career off it, didn't he?
So just jump back, mate. You mentioned as well earlier that at 18, that was when it sort of all changed for you.
Yeah, so obviously I was pretty normal life.
What were you doing at college? Was it business?
Oh, something like that. I can't remember now, but probably because that was what I was interested in, or some sort of IT business thing.
IT?
Yeah, I was always just interested in computers. And obviously at the time, that was the thing to do. I can't really remember though, to me, so I really didn't really bother. I was like 17, going on 18, and I remember I was walking down Croydon High Street in the summer, a few weeks before my 18th birthday, and this girl came up to me like a promo trying to get me into a bar, and I didn't have ID because like girls go to a club when they're 15, but guys, unless you've got like an older brother, but guys didn't really do that. Guys kind of had to wait. So I didn't have ID, and she was trying to get me in, and obviously I was like not trying to let on that I'm 17. So I was flirting with her and chatting her up, being like, "Oh, I haven't got it on me, like, just get me in or whatever." And she was like, "Nah, sorry, because there's all these bouncers." But we had a bit of chemistry, and we swapped numbers. And then obviously I can
swap numbers.
Yeah, no, we did.
Trying to play it down like that.
Yeah.
You asked for a number.
No, do you know? Probably, but I can't remember. I think it was more like whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe she asked my number. I can't remember.
Shut
Come on, bro.
He's still
You got some
clinging.
bird that's like 18, 19. You're 17. Come on, you must have asked for it.
Well, whether I asked or not, I got it. And
Still.
yeah, obviously I came clean. And then I was kind of interested in a job, and then like 3 weeks later, I was like, "Look, it's my birthday in a few weeks, but like, I'll be back in touch."
Yeah,
kind of
nice.
thing. And then actually on my birthday, she actually messaged me being like, "It's your birthday. Do you want to come down to the club tonight?" And we came down, and obviously like we hit it off and had a bit of a thing, but I was really intrigued about the job that she did, and I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm really interested in that." And then a few weeks later, she messaged me or called me, and she was like, "The guy that I work with, he's knocked his teeth out. So do you want to like work tonight so he can go to the dentist?" And I was like, "Yeah, amazing." She said, "I know you was interested in it." So I went into Croydon on the Friday night, and I absolutely loved it. But not only did I love it, I was really, really good at it. And they were like, "Do you want to work tomorrow night as well?"
What is it? Is it basically like the lads when you go to Malia or Magaluf and they're on
but
the
in the
side?
UK.
Yeah.
So it's like not as cringy, but not much less cringy.
You don't really get too much of that in Bournemouth. You used to get it
Not
a little
anymore,
bit.
not anymore, yeah.
But yeah, like you don't. It's not really as prominent.
But also now I think, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but like at that time, people walked around the clubs with like these frames that you would take photos of you in the frame with like the logo of the club, and then all the photos would get uploaded to Facebook, and you'd want to be tagged in the photos. Like that was like social media. That was like you wanted to get in the photo. And yeah, it was in a time when like being on the street handing out flyers and giving away free shots and talking to people was pretty normal. But yeah, I did the second shift, smashed it, and then they were going to pay me, and they were like, "Do you want the job?" And I was like, "Yeah." And very quickly, I've really got captured by that. And I went from working Friday and Saturday night to working about 4 or 5 nights a week within a few weeks.
And still going to college.
So this is the crazy thing. So at the time, I'm 18, family stuff's happened, so I've kind of like dropped out of school, dropped out of sixth form, I've gone college, not really done that. I'm still enrolled, so I'm still like going in, but the college was like an hour away from where I lived, and this new thing is just like I'm exposed to this whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
And the club, it's like an old Victorian building, and the top floor was a flat, and the managers of the club lived in the club, like above the club, and I just completely hit it off them, became really good friends with them, and they were just absolute like wreckheads.
Are you partying simultaneously?
So this is the thing. So then now I'm getting introduced to this way of life.
Yeah. What does that way of life look like? What, girls, drinking,
yeah,
Charlie?
I remember I still see it now. Like I walked into their dimly lit flat one day, and they used to have all the bouncers up there and all the club managers and all the, you know, whatever, and I just remember seeing coke for the first time.
How much worse does it make it that it's like dimly lit?
No, that's why I gave the details.
I know, yeah, I know.
Because it was just
it
this
makes
like,
it a little bit worse.
it was this like,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because it was old, they always had the heaters on because it needed to keep the thing, and it was this like dimly lit, low ceiling, like loft conversion almost thing, and it was just like it was, and it was just like this weirdly magical place that I shouldn't have been in. And I walked in one day, and they had been hiding it from me until then, and I walked in one day and I just saw this like glowing white substance, and I was like, oh, wow. And then that was the beginning of that story. And you know, from this point onwards, pretty quickly I'm now doing that 4 nights a week and drinking. And what would happen is I'd go to the club, and I'd stop working at like 1, the club would close at like 3, then we would go upstairs for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and do coke and drink fucking bottles of beer and do whatever. And as the other bars and clubs were closed, like the security and the managers and stuff would all come, because they were like, that was like the party house almost. And then we'd get to like 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and then everyone would go across to the strip club, which was opposite.
The Rippers.
But we weren't there to necessarily look at the girls. It was just the only place open, and we knew all the girls. So like the guys who were actually at the strip club would be doing the whole strip club thing, but the girls we knew on a first name basis, and we used to go out for roast dinners with them and stuff. So it was a weird thing, but at the same time,
such a weird like family unit.
Well, it is, because you're bound, you know, birds of a feather. Like people connect in a community, and we're all in it together. We all work late nights, so there's this weird kind of thing there. And that was actually the craziest period of my life, because what happened was I kind of wasn't talking to my mum and stuff, so I was barely at home. I was at college. I was also weirdly in the mix. I was actually an English and maths tutor as well, for like kids. And so like the English and maths tutor place was like 45 minutes to an hour from where I lived. The college was like an hour the opposite way, and then the club was like 15 minutes away. And what I was doing for a few months, which was mental, was I was going to college maybe 2 or 3 or 4 days, maybe 3 days a week. So I'd get up in the morning early, then I'd travel an hour to college. I'd go to college for a few hours, then I'd come home, I'd like have a shower, then I'd go like an hour to this place to be an English and maths tutor for like a 4-hour shift. Then I would come back, I'd freshen up, and then I'd go into town and I'd go clubbing. Not go clubbing, but like work in the clubs, and then stay up, drink, do drugs, stay up until like 7 in the morning in the strip club. And when the strip club closed, I'd then walk like 25 minutes home, and then have a shower, and then go to college.
Isn't it mad that when you're like 16, 17, 18, like you have no perception of energy levels?
Yeah.
Like we would go sixth form, smoke green all day, go work at Tesco, then go sell like snapbacks, Ray-Bans, whatever else, and go gym and take like fucking no explode for the gym just to like perk yourself back up
at 8 p.m.
But then somehow like get everything done in a day.
And then go home and play COD for 5 hours.
Yeah, and it's like, how are we getting that much fucking done in a day, mate?
Do you know what it is? It's actually the like obliviousness of the real world. Because now, like, the single biggest drain on your motivation is like the state of the world, and your worry about like if you're on track or what the economy is going to bring or bad things. Because now you know that there's wars, now you know that people get killed and raped, and now you know that like we're going to hit a recession, everyone's going to lose all their money. Like, so you carry that with you every single day. And when you're a kid, it's just
in the
ignorance is
moment.
bliss.
Yeah, mate. Do you know what, mate? I hadn't even thought of it like that. I am slightly into conspiracy theories. I can't help it.
Into it,
and you know, I say conspiracy theories because that's how it's labelled, but in reality, it is what is actually happening. Yeah. And the more I watch that content, and the more of that content I consume, the more I feel frustrated about the circumstances, and the more I have to tell people about what's actually going on. And then I do that, and I'm like, I've literally been carrying that with me to tell someone. And then I said to my missus, is it better if I just stop watching it?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. But like, you don't think about it. You should just live in the moment.
Yeah.
That is such a thing that resonates with me, because when COVID came in, I think everyone got on it, like the conspiracy kind of hype. But then that also began to unravel just a whole belief system of how the world is. And that really, like, I feel like I had a complete ego death, because for the last few years, I feel like I've actually been like depressed, because I feel like I had a pretty good understanding of like what life was and what the world was like and where I was going. I had a very clear plan. Things were going well for me, and I thought I'd kind of figured it out. And then this came in, and I realized that nothing is as what it seems, and also nothing is ever going to be the same. And a lot of the things that you look forward to in life have now been ruined. And I've been kind of grieving the life that I always thought I had. And I know that I'm about to start my new life, but I'm in this like purgatory, this like transitionary phase for maybe like a year or two, where I'm like having to grieve this blissful world that you always thought you had, almost like that childlike view of like what life was like, just easy, carefree. And you know, if you get a job and then you do this and then you get money and then you'll like get a wife and then you'll get like a house and then you do this, and then if you want to make money you just buy another house and rent it. Like all those things were pretty 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And now nothing that is now is. Like now everything's different, and that is so like overwhelming. And I find like now that people, I've always been the person in my friendship group and stuff that people come to for advice and support, and that I'm the one who's kind of got it together. But I've now realized that I'm kind of struggling, and when I try and speak to my friends or family, everyone else is fucked.
Yeah.
People are exhausted, they're ill every week, people are just, you know, there's nothing to look forward to anymore to a large degree. And I feel like that now drains your energy massively, because, you know, you look forward to going out for a meal or going on a holiday, or this thing you're going to do, or maybe it's a financial goal, like I'm going to save up for a house, but like those things are so difficult now, that those things that get you out of bed in the morning with that spring in your step, a lot of them are gone. And that has been, whether it's through conspiracy theories or just the reality of the situation, that's been the biggest catch. And I've had a lot of carrying that around with me, and I got to a point where I was like telling my friends, like, you got to stop watching that shit, like, because whether it's true or not, back to the thing we said earlier, you're never really going to know. And even if you do, it's actually so massively out of your control that you're just going to be worn down by this idea that you're being controlled, or that no matter what you do, there's a bigger picture.
But the issue is with that, and it's also like what you're saying, there's a lot to, you know, sort of digest, but once you look under the mat, there's fucking no going back, mate. And
with anything.
Yeah, and as soon as you look under it, it just gets deeper and deeper, and the more you consume, the more you understand. It is genuinely the Matrix. It's the red pill and the blue pill, and it is actually that. And I find that I would rather be aware of it and conscious to it than not.
You know what you said earlier about like simulation. I agree with you that the Matrix exists, but I don't think it exists as this I feel like conceptually it exists, but it doesn't exist. It's not like we're all in these like jelly pods and they're draining us for battery, but the world is real and like everything, but all these structures systems are in place. And once you see that, it's so blatantly obvious.
And also, mate, I work in credit.
Oh, mate.
So like
you know the scam, yeah.
My whole ethos and what I want to build eventually is a lending business tailored towards debt consolidation to support people with ultimately, you know, financial liberation and coming out of debt. But like, now I've seen that world, I'm like, that in itself is like very, very, can be very, very nasty. Yeah. And I think that in line with doing the digging and understanding the world in a bit more detail is something that I could never look back on. Do you know what I mean? Like I've already seen it.
It's traumatizing.
What is that analogy of the guy in the cave? Do you know what I'm talking about?
What, like he peeks out and then once he's seen outside the cave?
Nah, he's like, look there. So like there, I feel like I'll fucking butcher it if I do it on here. But there's this like story of like these guys in a cave and basically they're...
Oh, I think I know what you're on about. Is it the guys in the cave and then there's a fire and they can see their reflection in the fire?
Yeah, and that's what they're watching, but they're tied down.
Yeah, and then one guy eventually sees past the fire but doesn't want to go out because it's not normality for him, so he returns back into the cave.
Yeah.
It's something like that. I don't know how...
I think he goes outside and then I think like he tries to tell the others, but they don't want to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know what you mean about like sometimes it becomes overwhelming.
It's also very isolating when you feel like you're around people that you care about who are unwilling or unable to take it on board.
The worst part is, right, this is what I said, me and my friend talk about this. The worst part for me, right, is, for example, let's take a common thing, which is the news, right? People that watch the news religiously are closed off to looking at the other side. And that for me is so difficult to understand because my side might not be right, or, you know, independent journalism might not be right, but surely you have to take it into consideration before you make your decision.
Yeah.
And like, I find it so hard when I hear or speak to older people and they're like, yeah, well, this on the news or this on the news. And I'm just like, you believe that? Like,
yeah.
How have you not looked at the other side? And it's not for everything, it's certain topics and stuff, but like, how have you not looked at the other side or done more research before making a penultimate decision which you will not be swayed on?
Maybe it's because they've genuinely been structured to believe that thing their whole lives. And like you said earlier about the whole transition of how the world's going now, where you have the old generic way of living is now almost, you don't really do that anymore. There's a new way of living. Maybe they're reluctant to believe it and they're almost conditioned to not believe it, that they won't.
There's a spectrum though, I think. Like you've got some people who are just like unable to comprehend what it is. Like they're just dumb or they're just simple.
But you're bang on, mate. That's exactly what I think.
But there are people who are highly capable of doing it, but they either are so entrenched in the existing belief or, and this is an experience I had, I don't want to get the fucking podcast cancelled, but like on the vaccines front, like no matter what anyone says, like the vaccines have fucked people up, right? And I know loads of genuinely people like my age who now have health conditions off the back of that. And I have a friend and she had like a very serious health condition that suddenly appeared, like a life-altering one potentially. And she was trying to like dig in and like through a process of elimination, try and get to the bottom of it. And I was like, when did it start, right? And it was obviously in the time where, you know, she had the vaccine or whatever. And she was really, really like, she really kicked off at me for suggesting that could have been a thing, right? And then after all, I was like, why are you going mental at me? Like, I'm just offering a scenario for you to explore. And she started crying and all kicking off. And then by the time it calmed down, she was so like distressed by the fact that she actually kind of thought it was because of that and that she did it to herself. And she couldn't accept that the vaccines might potentially cause harm, because if she accepts that, she now accepts her fate, that something she did has now led to her downfall. And I've got so many people like that, like even parents and grandparents and family members. I was like, I don't think you should rush into it. Like, I think you should look into it. And they can't accept that there could be like some side effects because they've done it.
There's no arguing it. Like, if you actually look at where we're at today, and look, you know, I know this is a taboo topic, but like, I feel very strongly about it. Like, how can there not be side effects of something on that magnitude?
Yeah.
And like everything that's come out now, for example, about transmissions.
Like you were told at the start,
It won't
transmit. It transmits. So like why would you then not believe that could be a variable that could be affecting your health?
Yeah.
It's fucking.
But
it's
I'm
mad.
not saying like don't get vaccines, but people's thought process was they weren't even checking, or they weren't even like
That's
screening.
what I'm saying, yeah.
And when you ask people, most people I spoke to said they only got it to go on holiday, and then they weren't even able to go on holiday.
And then after that, it wasn't even a thing to go on holiday.
And now it's and don't get me wrong, like look, it was a crazy time.
Mad, yeah.
And people, you know, again, you have your own outlook on this main character syndrome. You have your own outlook, and I'm quite resilient. And don't get me wrong, I was panicking at times about certain things because the world was falling apart. But I was able to like bide my time with my decision rather than just do it instantly because I was told to do it. But other people don't have that confidence. Like a lot, especially people. I noticed a really funny thing actually, which was some of the most successful, intelligent people I know weren't getting it, and some of the people I know who weren't really doing very well in life were getting it straight away. And that is a reflection of how they lived their life before this even happened, because the people who sit in front of the TV every day probably aren't the people who are breaking down barriers and inventing things and, you know, opposite entrepreneurs. They have this rule-breaking, bending approach to life anyway, where they question things and they evaluate the risks and the opportunities. And I saw a bit of a pattern emerging there between people who had the early uptake and people who really bided their time with it.
I always just think it comes down to education as well. It's just like you just need just do your research and then make your own decision. And you shouldn't be shunned upon if you want to make a decision that goes against the grain.
Yeah.
And that's what was so weird about the whole thing. It was like...
But you're saying that from a position of someone who is able to...
I know, yeah.
And that's the other thing I counter when I was saying people are dumb. I had a friend who was literally hemorrhaging friends because he was really pushing it hard. And I said, mate, you need to start speaking their language. Because
But why do they feel so passionate about it? That's what I find so difficult to wrap my head around. It's like... It's a subject, and it's something that all of us will be affected by. But why do you think you're the person to tell me what to do with my body?
Yeah, but
That's what I found difficult.
It's like a herd mentality. But I mean, people were really, you know, all the different stages. And one thing I realised is like, even now, like I see someone on a fucking tube with like a full kitted mask. I'm like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, do you know what? Actually, as much as I don't agree with that and I think it's silly, they may have like a terminally ill person at home, and it's like actually completely game changing for them. Like if they were to bring that home and kill someone. And I had my first realization of that when I think it must have been the first Christmas, like the 2020 Christmas, and I was meant to come home for Christmas, and I actually had a falling out with my dad because he lives with my nan, and at the time, you know, I held on quite a long time, so I hadn't had a vaccine when I was going home for Christmas, and he was like, "You're gonna kill my mum," blah 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 blah. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just coming home for Christmas. And when I heard that from my dad, who never ever speaks to me like that, right? There was this genuine like anger in his voice. And I was like, you have been indoctrinated to a point where you're scared.
Yeah.
And I get it. I'm like, and he's not a stupid man either. Like he understands the world and how it works, but he has been basically told that like, your family member's going to die, your mum's going to die.
I had a similar experience with my mum as well. So she got indoctrinated as well, which allowed me to see like the other side of it, because it's quite difficult when, like you said, if you're like Jack said, if you're uneducated, and also maybe if you don't have elder family members who do have a health condition, even though they're probably not going to die from COVID. I mean, some of them probably have. It's difficult to push the idea that, it's not that, because if it does happen, some people it probably did happen. And like, for instance, you going home for Christmas, like if something would have ever happened, then it's quite easy for the blame to be pushed onto somebody.
The only and mate, I'm completely with that, and I understand it from both perspectives, but even after they found out that the vaccine doesn't stop transmissions, people still felt strongly.
But they'd already bought in because they'd already had it.
But also, do you think it's because they had it already and they'd brought into the belief that they were embarrassed to go back against it?
Embarrassed, scared.
They had to push the narrative.
I hear it all, but nonetheless, like, it should always just come down to each to their own.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't affect other people, it shouldn't really be an issue.
But this was the thing, because I completely agree. Like Like, you know, if you want to be gay, if you want to be transgender, mate, knock yourself out. Like, I don't care.
You do you, mate.
It's only if you now start forcing your belief on me, and like the whole Jordan Peterson argument, he like, if you want to be called him, she, he, whatever, that's fine. But like, you can't expect me to, as a university lecturer who has 1,000 students I see a week, learn and memorize every single person's pronouns, and those pronouns can change within a sentence.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So he was like, just like practically speaking, I'm gonna get it wrong, and if you're gonna then they call it like dead naming or like mispronouncing or whatever it is, like he's just being like, I it's not possible for me to stay on top of it. Like, it's impossible. And I think when you begin to impose your belief, and I think that was part of the debate with the vaccines, was when they started saying unvaccinated people can't go to work, you're going to lose your job, you can't travel. Then it's like, well, you're actually now punishing someone for wanting to have autonomy over their own body.
Yeah.
And the counter was what you just said, which is, yeah, but why does it affect you? Because it's you get a vaccine if you want one because it protects you. But then the whole sort of scheme of it, the whole propaganda was people who don't have it are dangerous.
Yeah.
And I, again, although I think it's stupid, I did over time go, I don't agree, but I get why people are so hot on it, because they've been under the, you know, they're trusting the health system and the government that runs their whole life, that they're saying, oh guys, like, you're all going to die. So we're trying our best to help you. And if you don't do it, you know, you can't stand within 2 meters of someone, or someone you know in your family could die. And although that sounds ridiculous, people just, you know, people panic.
It's mad. Society is mad with it. I find it very difficult to not question things.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to not take a step back and have a look at a situation or a circumstance and be like, there could be more to this.
But also, you said like you're in credit and lending, and the thing is, like you said, that business is basically people saying, we know that other people are unable to manage their finances in a certain way, and they're going to need an out, and we're going to put a certain percentage in because it's going to then yield us this return. And then even if they have like failed payments, there's this process in place. So you're approaching the world from an understanding of how the world really works, not the one who needs to borrow the money because you want to buy sort of ASOS, and you know, because people literally take out loans and stuff to get an iPod or whatever. But like,
I've been that side of the coin as well. So I understand. Yeah, I get it from a consumer perspective. I think it's probably just a mindset thing. Yeah. And the more you do, like we were talking about, the more research you do, the more you find out
it's
about
like
things. And then
before you know it, you end up questioning everything, whether we're in a fucking simulation or not.
Yeah.
But just to pull back on the story, obviously.
Might as well go for a wee.
Oh yeah, of course, mate. Let's pause. Well, Cal, actually, should we just roll it out?
Just carry on rolling.
Yeah, we'll keep rolling. Yeah,
I think that is that's the first time that we've actually spoken about this on the podcast as well.
I know, yeah.
It's a very interesting topic, and I think the way that he packaged it up and sort of like explained the situation, similar to the old way of life and the new way of life, makes complete sense.
Mate, I need a wee.
You go for it, mate.
Cool. So we did a little pit stop, but we were just pulling back on the story. Obviously, got a couple of digestives as well. But we were just saying about when you obviously were in the clubs and you're in that party lifestyle, as well as managing college, and not only college but also the tutoring side of things. What happened from there? Why did you end up going to university?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was always kind of on a trajectory that it was just an expected thing that I was going to go to uni. And no one in my family's actually ever been to uni. So my dad's always taken a lot of pride in me being like an academic and being able to go down a route that he was actually able to do it, but he actually chose not to do it because he thought that it was like nerdy. And that's like one of his life regrets, was like he could have gone to like a better school, but all his brothers went to like the rougher school, and he just thought, oh, you know, I don't want to wear like a city blazer and a hat, so I'll just stick with my brothers. So he always wanted that for me. And like I said, I was in a school where that was sort of the expectation. And then all that stuff happened with life, and I kind of went off on a tangent. And like I said, I was going between the club and English and math tutoring and college. And ultimately the education side of it was completely neglected. And I was into drink and drugs, and I was doing all this crazy lifestyle. And I actually got really ill. And I almost died, actually. I had like I've always had really bad tonsillitis. I had my tonsils taken out. And then after like a couple of weeks of recovery, I went back to the clubs and I got on it, and I was like, I had this like, irritation in my throat, and I actually had a hemorrhage in my throat.
Do you reckon that's from Charlie?
Yeah, I think it was just like my body was, I was like, I have this photo actually of me like white as a sheet, like super crazy skinny, because I'd lost loads of weight. I was completely living a mad lifestyle. Just living off of like KFC and toast and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Toast.
Yeah. No, like I'd
I
come
know what
home,
you
have
mean.
some fucking toast and a shower, and go out, and then come back and have some toast and a shower.
Yeah.
You know.
How long did that lifestyle go on for at that time?
That heavy, intense part was probably about 6 months, maybe. And obviously, when you're 18, you're not a kid, but you're a kid still. Like, it was my first experience, and I just dived right in at the deep end. And then I kind of realized that this was my life now. I was hooked by not like the party lifestyle, but like the clubs. Like I fell in love with it. And I actually got headhunted to go across to like the best club in the area. But that was my first real introduction to like formal professional event management. Like before, I was just like fucking hand out flyers and thought that was, I'm a promoter. And we went across, and there was like computers and softwares and algorithms and do this and data this, and it was like I got my first idea of like my first introduction of how to do it properly. And I kind of was like one of the managers of that club, and things were going really well for me, and that was kind of like my life set. And I always wanted to go on and run events. And I actually was holding an interview for like an assistant or whatever the role was, or maybe like ticket reps or whatever, and we had like 100 people come through, and there was this one guy, and he came in, he was like 45 minutes late for the interview, and when we were in the interview, he was like so just like disinterested, like really poor like etiquette, and just like looking around and clicking his neck. And I remember the guy who was my boss was like, fuck this guy, and I was like, no, he's the one, like he's just got this something special about him. So somehow we ended up hiring him, and we just became best friends instantly. Like, he was an amazing guy, like love him to bits. And he was really idolizing me because he wanted to be where I was. Not that I was anywhere, but at the time it seemed like that. And I kind of took him under my wing, and I was showing him, and I was trying to give him all the opportunities and give him extra work whenever I could. And I remember I got into like a bit of a scrap with the other promotions manager at the club, and the owner of the club was like, look, you guys can't really like work together in the same capacity anymore. So like either you've got to like patch it up with him, or you leave, or I give you like your own night, like a Sunday night at the club. And obviously Sunday night in like a local town, like
Dead night, innit?
yeah, it's not going to work. But I was like, oh, no. And then this guy who was my friend, he was like, let's do it, please, this is my dream, and like, you know, it's a big opportunity. And I was like, oh. And he kind of talked me into it, and I was like, okay, cool. I called the owner, and I was like, right, yeah, I'm gonna do the event with him. He's coming around my house tomorrow. We're gonna do it. So give the job, like quit the job, and I'm gonna take this on. And I said to my mate, like, cool, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, come to my house and we'll map it all out. Got to like 10, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock or whatever, and he hadn't turned up. And I spoke to the club owner or whatever, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just waiting for him to come around. So he's like, he's in the office, he's just taking your job. And
What, the guy that gassed you into doing the Sunday night?
yeah. So my mate completely gassed me into fucking training him up, then taking him under my wing. And
He's not your mate now, is he?
No, but that's not how we fell out.
What?
It gets worse. It gets
How on
worse.
earth can it get
It gets
worse?
worse. Well, what he then did, like how we fell out, was ultimately like just a bigger version of that again.
I'd have stormed down the club, mate.
Yeah, you would, but I was shell shocked. I was like, I've been betrayed. But then now I also have no job, and I have no money, and I wasn't really chatting to my mum and stuff. So he used to always have a free house for the whole summer. He lived with his mum, but his mum would like go abroad for like the whole summer. So he always had one of those houses that everyone just went and chilled out and fucking smoked weed out or whatever. And he basically just let me live with him on his sofa, and he like made me food and stuff because I just had nothing really.
You sold your soul, mate.
So he kind of like snaked me, and then like was also my lifeline. But the worst thing was, this was in like May or June.
So you, after he's done that to you, let me just get my head around this. You've gone to his that summer.
Yeah, because I had nothing else, nowhere else to go. Not I had nowhere else to go at all. I could have just been at home, but it was like
all your mates are there and everything else as well.
Yeah, and also just like I didn't have no money, and he was sort of like, you know, cook me dinner and just let me chill there. And he was like one of my best mates, and our other mates were there.
What did you say to him when you found out?
I can't really remember, to be honest, because it was 10 years ago now. But what was worse about it was this was in maybe like May or June, and he was going to uni in September. So he had snaked me just to have the job for 2 months when he knew he didn't even need it because he was going to uni, whereas this was my life.
Oh, it's cold.
And then what happened was I have this whole like weird breakdown, depressive thing, like my whole life's over, like, but and then I'm like, oh my God, I was meant to go to uni and I was so intelligent and I've thrown it all away. And I was really, really down. And again, he was a weird friend in the sense that he would snake me, but then he would also try and do anything for me. So I basically signed up to go to like a college that had like this thing like access to higher education. It's like a 1-year course, like a speed course, and then if you get that qualification you can then go to uni. So I was like, okay, I'll go into that course, and I enrolled in it, and it was like 2 months went by. It gets to like September or end of September, and I'm calling them like, when does the course start, because I haven't really heard nothing. They're like, oh sorry, we decided to discontinue the course. So I'm like, fuck. So then I look around, and then like Croydon, obviously near where I live, they got like a college, which is obviously shit. And I found a similar course, and I called them up, and they were like, yeah, like it's fine, you can come down. And obviously, funnily enough, the recruitment, like the onboarding day is like today or tomorrow, so just come down at this time. So I go to the college, and I'm in the queue, and it's like these almost like the desk is there, and there's like a chair, and like a single file, and you would like, that person would go up for the meeting, you'd move up the chairs. And then this guy got up, it's my turn, I walked up and I was like, he was like, oh hi mate, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm here to enroll in this course. He goes, I'm really sorry, but that guy just took the last place. And I was like, surely you fucking put one more person on or whatever. And he was like, nah. And I walked out, and I remember I just called my mum and I cried. And I was just like, I've fucking thrown it all away. You know what I mean? And obviously, you know, we know now that like education is not the be all and end all, but like when you're a bit younger, like, you know, it is a big deal, because that's how you understand your lens that you look through life is quite like narrow. School, uni, wife, house, kids, die kind of thing. Yeah. So like you feel like you've kind of ruined that. And I go back to my mate's house or whatever, and he actually obviously was going to uni, so he actually had just finished in his sixth form, and he called his sixth form and basically hustled to get them to take me on last minute, and a term had already started. It was 3 weeks in, but because I was 19, I was like within a few weeks of no longer being able to have free education. So I ended up having to do like year 12 when I was 19 in like a new college, sixth form. So they're all like 16, 17, 18, and I'm like 19. But also not only am I 19, but I've also had this very like adult experience. And I just was like, cool, I'm just going to like knuckle down. I had no money, nothing. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to...
Your friend's weird, isn't he?
Well, wait, it gets worse. So this is what I mean. It's like he would cut you down and then do everything for you. Yeah. But some people are just like that. And it like, they're happy... Like, if they're happy, they'll do anything for you. But if they're not where they want to be, like, they have the potential to snake you kind of thing. And yeah, I just...
It's a bit harsh, that, mate. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it is, and do you know what?
That's your mate at the end of the day.
That was my boy. It wasn't even my mate. That was
Imagine
my
you
boy.
did that to me, bro.
That's why I'm saying it's a bit harsh.
I'd be heartbroken.
I'm thinking of it from like mine and your friendship. I'm thinking, like, if you're cutting me down when you're down, it should be the opposite.
It's piss poor,
but also,
mate.
if you're 18, 19, and... you don't have the benefit of experience of life, that like there are bigger things out there are more things out there. Like at that time, I had my view of my life was what was immediately in front of me. And although I always had like ambition, I used to dream about like doing really well in Croydon. I was like, I'm hungry, but that's all I knew. I only knew what my family, my friends and my immediate environment looked like.
The thing is, you say that you're young and you haven't had the life experiences, but it just boils down to morals, and I think you have those morals at that age, and you...
Yeah, but those morals are taught, right, from the people around you. Mm-hmm. So, like, you meet certain lads now, and you think, like, you still ain't grown up, mate. You'd still sneak your pal for a girl. Yeah. And, like, how are you at 27, 28, still even conscious of doing that?
Yeah. But also, morals you could argue that that was his bad morals, not mine. I was quite like trusting and open, and
it's not your fault.
I was naive that things can.
You're not
can
normal.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it's your fault by any stretch.
No, but what I mean is, I was then shell shocked by what had just happened to me. Plus, I didn't have nothing else because I'd distanced myself from my mum and my family, and I've lost my education. I wasn't chatting to my friends from school anymore because I'd got off. So like now I'm all of a sudden left with nothing, and the realization probably the last few years of my life just hits you. But I ended up going to the sixth form, put my headphones in, and I did the whole of year 12 in like 3 or 4 weeks, and they let me do year 13. And off the back of that, like crazy stuff happened, but I ended up getting into uni, which was ultimately like where I was always destined to go. And I went a bit of an obscure route, but I got there in the end. And I remember I actually wanted to go uni more for my dad, just to like make him proud. I actually wanted it more for him than I wanted it for myself, because it was always something he told me that's what I was going to do. And obviously I enjoyed it. Like, it was a good experience. I'm glad I went. But at that time I was just desperate just to get back on the straight and narrow. And like all that party lifestyle stopped, and I was a lot more like, you know, hardened by the experience, and a lot more like smart, and a lot more like regimented.
So when you got to university, is that where you put on your first event?
Yeah, well, my first ever event.
Also, hold on. Before we dive into that, how does he snake you again?
We'll get there. It's in chronological order. So basically,
he comes back around.
So basically, we stay boys, right? And he goes to uni in London. But when we talk about weed, like, he almost turned into a weed leaf, because this guy loves weed, right?
Yeah.
And he went to uni, and he just became a stoner, and he got kicked out of uni. And I'm now a year behind because he's at uni, and then I'm doing bloody sixth form. And I go off to uni, and I basically return the favour, and I hustle with him to get him into my uni. But obviously he doesn't have the qualifications now, so he had to do a foundation degree at Bournemouth Paul College when I was doing the main degree.
And this is when you come to Bournemouth University.
So we come to Bournemouth, right? And yeah, skipping one step though, like my first ever event was in the first ever club I was involved with. And like I said, I became really good mates with the managers. And I thought that by putting flyers on cash points and carrying people down the street, that, you know, that's how it works. And my first ever event was on like Easter Saturday, and it was a Playboy bunny party. And mate, it was this really hot bird on like a flyer with a bunny ears. It looked sick. And again, like, it's this naivety that you look back on and find funny. I came up with this like brand for my event, and it was called like L'Ambiance, and it was supposed to be some sort of like posh Latin French, like classy ambient kind of thing. And yeah, that was always funny.
How did that night go?
It was alright. I mean, again, like, it was just luck of the draw. I had no idea what I was doing. It was just whoever was going to turn up to the club was just going to turn up to the club anyway, I think.
But it was probably a nice feeling, wasn't it? The first event.
It was. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but it was good to just do it. But after that, I had never run one of my own events again. Actually, I think I did run some events with my friend who snaked me, and they didn't go very well.
Mate, there's so many red flags with this, mate.
It gets really bad. So we go to uni.
I already know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so we go.
Is it to do with a bird?
It's actually not.
Oh,
no.
I was going to say, like,
that is a common thing that goes wrong, but no, it actually wasn't. He wasn't like that kind of guy. He actually had really good morals in many ways, but he just, you know, people lose their heads. So what happened was, we actually kind of fell out. Like, we came to uni, and then we just kind of like separated, and it kind of fell out. And I got into, like, first year I come to uni, I make new friends. He was not in a great place or whatever. We kind of distanced ourselves. He was just a stoner. And it came to our second year of uni, and it was like, I don't know, October or something. And he kind of reached out to me and was like, look, it's Christmas coming up. We're both broke. Why don't we run an event together to kind of rekindle the friendship and make some money for Christmas? And I was like, yeah, cool, because I'm broke. I'm stealing chicken from Asda to eat because my budget's like £14 a week to live. So I'm like, yeah, definitely, let's do it. And back in the day, we had this dream of building this massive event business. So we go and do an event at the old fire station. It was like the last Tuesday of term, and it was the same week as the final of I'm a Celeb, Get Me Out of Here. So we did I'm a Student, Get Me Out of Here, and we climbed over like where some of the buildings are on Coldenhurst Road. We were ripping like ivy leaves off of a building site and building like a forest, and we did like bush tucker trials on stage and dirty pints and stuff like that, and it did really, really well. So like the old fire station were like, we want you to do more events with us, and I was like, yeah, we will, but like we want to do like proper events. So they were like, okay, fine. So they gave us a Saturday night, and me and that friend set up what is now Foreverland.
Oh, so the idea was conceptualized then.
It was, but it wasn't Foreverland then. So we had this idea, which was, it was actually called Beyond, but it was like BYND, and it meant, and it stood for Being Young Never Dies. And it was this like childlike, nostalgic kind of experience. Because I remember at the time we were all like doing drugs and going to these raves and at the O2, like treatment back in the day. And they suddenly, it went from like all the sing-along vocal house music that everyone loves to going a bit weird and dark and like
trippy.
Yeah, and I was like, fucking hell, people are dropping out of uni and people are like getting too...
Oh, you were experiencing that with the music as well.
Yeah, it was just because everyone would go raving every weekend.
It gets like that at university.
It does, because you just get into the cycle. And a lot of people have never seen a drug before, and they come to uni and they kind of fall into like, oh, I'm now cool.
Yeah.
And everyone does it.
And also like a lot of those people that do that because they've never done it beforehand.
No tolerance.
When they do it, it's like the best thing fucking in the world. But like we obviously we did like Mandy younger. So when I got to university, I already had like a
bit of XP.
Yeah, do you know I had some XP under the belt. So I didn't fall as hard, but you'd see certain kids from like Surrey and like you could tell they just weren't about it. And then as soon as they got involved, it was like 3 times a week they were going out doing pingers, and you're like, you can see them deteriorating.
Yeah,
like they don't go to the gym, like they're getting skinnier. Like you can see like the drugs almost taking over.
That was exactly my experience. Like people's girlfriends were dumping them, they were getting kicked out of uni, like they were just a mess. And I was also in that sort of like downwards trajectory, but then I kind of acknowledged, I was aware enough to kind of see it going on, and I was like, I need to stop this. I actually think I was here at Christmas on my own in halls, and I was like the only person in halls, and I was in halls on my own on Christmas, and my mates came down for New Year's Eve from home, and they were like proper stoners, and obviously I smoke weed but not like that, and they just wiped me out for like a whole few days. And when they left, I remember feeling like really like down, like on a come down, and I was like, I need to turn this around. And I couldn't, like, I was like, I need to like get a bit more fun and make it a little bit less serious. And that's where the idea came from, was to make something that was fun and colourful. And the Being Young Never Dies was this kind of like Peter Pan kind of vibe. And that was really like reflective of where I was in my own head at the time. And that's where the concept came from. And we set it up, we got all the artwork done, we got all the date, we were building it all. And I remember being in my room one day, and I had this almost like this, I can't remember what the word is when they say like this like idea, like an intuitive idea. It was like a message from God, and it was like Neverland.
Epiphany.
Yeah, it was like an epiphany. This idea just lightning bolted out of nowhere, and it was like Neverland. And I was like, oh my fucking God, we're doing this whole like never growing up childish thing. I was like, Neverland, like everyone knows the story of Peter Pan and the boy who never grows up. And I just called him and I was like, mate, I smashed it. We've got it wrong. It's supposed to be called Neverland. And he was like, nah, it's not. And I was like, bruv, trust me. I was like, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This is what is going to make us. And he didn't really like it. And I was like, well, look, I'm convinced what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get like all the branding done and stuff, and I'll pay for it. And if we use it, we use it. But if we don't, like, I'll swallow it. We go and get it done, and it's just amazing, like spot on. And I'm like, this is the thing. And similarly to that experience I told you about with the carbon emissions thing when I was at school, when I get into an idea that I really, really believe with, I'll run with it. And if you're not on board with me, like, I'm not gonna like not do it because you're not there. I'm just gonna do it. So I think what happened was, in hindsight, we discovered this years later, was he didn't want to do it and I did, and ultimately we carried on, but he just kind of checked out.
Had some resentment towards you for it.
Yeah, and we launched it, and it just fucking banged. It completely sold out, and it just took over Bournemouth as this like massive thing. Launched the second one, sold out, and I remember getting a letter, and I'm like, this is my dream, and it's all come off, and I've always thought I'm going to be a big businessman, and I've actually nailed it, like smashed it. And obviously my premonition was proven to be right because it just captured the imagination of everyone. And we launched and put the second event on sale, and I felt like, yeah, this is going to be the biggest event in the world. And a couple of weeks later, I got a letter in the post from Great Ormond Street Hospital, and they were suing me for a copyright infringement of the word Neverland.
Really?
Yeah, and what had happened is Disney, I think the story is that Disney had donated the rights, the image rights of Neverland to the Children's Cancer Ward to make it like a magical place for the cancer kids, right?
Oh, that's not really the type of people you want to be getting sued by.
And I was like...
That's such a difficult position to be in.
And my heart sinks because I'm like, what the fuck, man? Why is nothing ever working out for me? Like, I finally cracked it, and now the kids with cancer are taking me on. I'm like, 1, I'm a kid. 2, I've got no money. And 3, no one's going to back me.
What a horrible opponent in that situation as well.
Yeah,
Like,
you don't want to have to take it on.
yeah, you're never gonna win that.
Never. And I had to change the name.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, my friend had basically kind of checked out and he wasn't really doing the work, and he was like lying to me that he had done the work that we both split the roles with and stuff.
And you going 50-50 on the money at that point?
Yeah. So, but what was happening was I was trying to manage him because he was like, not doing work is one thing, but telling me you're doing the work and you're not doing it is actually hurting me now. So I had to almost move into this slightly more like parental management role and give him rotas and structures. And I felt like the more that happened, the more he was pulling away. And yeah, we basically had to change the name, and we kind of fell out over the new name change. And by this point, I think like shortly after this event, he was kind of like, he wasn't really there. He didn't really play a role in how it was working, but he was still owning it. And then we kind of fell out, and then I was like, look, like we need to kind of move forward in a certain direction that he didn't really agree with. And it kind of, we stopped talking for a bit. He didn't speak to me for like 3 or 4, 5, 6 weeks, and I was just running everything on my own, and I was like super stressed. And then a short time later, on the night before Christmas, he walked into the bank and emptied the bank account. And I only found out like a week later when I tried to go and pay for something.
How much?
It was only $2,000.
Still though,
That's your lifeline.
We're students, and $2,000 is everything. And now I'm like, and now my dream, this business may fall apart because we can't even pay our bills. And again, like it was stupid, like $2,000. But then that was like, you know, it all kicked off. But I basically was like, keep it. Like, not that he was volunteering it back, but I was like, keep it. That's your severance. Like, you're gone.
yeah.
Because now it's untenable. Like, I can't work with someone who's stolen from me. And I'm not even thinking about the first time he's named me. I'm just thinking about right now. But this is what I mean about he repeated a similar kind of thing later on. And
Leopard never changes its stripes.
no, and I've heard loads of stories about him since doing other things with other businesses and other jobs and other people. And it's like, he was honestly one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and I believed in him having so much potential, and I wish him the absolute best. But the problem is certain people, they just can't fucking help themselves sometimes. And, you know, people always say to me, like, he must be kicking himself now, like, looking at it, because...
Probably is.
Yeah, and it's sad because it would have been amazing to do it with him. But at the end of the day, sometimes you need, like, a ruthlessness to be successful, and he wasn't playing ball, and it got proven, luckily, that he went and did it and act like that to show me that my intuition was right, because he went and stole.
It doesn't even need to be you being ruthless. It's just him being a cunt in that moment.
Yeah.
And there's no arguing it, like stealing the money off of you, not telling you, and then simultaneously to that, not helping you with the project. That is just cuntish behaviour.
Well, later on, because we didn't speak, we had a massive falling out, and then later on, maybe a year or so later, a year and a half later, we actually, it was this whole beef between us at uni. And weirdly enough, him and his boys lived the road behind me and my boys. So what happened was, we basically orchestrated this mediation where me and my boys went round to his boys' house, and our boys were in the other rooms, and me and him sat down, and...
You boys got caught on the mafia shit, didn't you?
Yeah. Because, you know, when you're young again, like, you feel like you're a fucking big business person or whatever. And, you know, he was trying to come back on board.
All right.
And I was like, mate, nah. But what happened was, I got him to admit that all the things he did were wrong and that he done it and he's stolen, and he was like, I want to give you the money back and come back, and I was like, nah, like I can't work with you anymore. But that's you know, that's a life experience as well, and a business lesson.
I love it because like when you're a bit younger and stuff, you get caught up in the moment, and like in reality, like you said, it's only $2,000, right? So it's not really a big deal, but at that moment in that situation, it seems like everything.
Well, it was everything, but also it's the principle.
Yeah.
Like if it was 20 quid, it was the fact that you did it and he told me that he did it because he felt that he was owed it from the events.
It's poor.
And I was like, mate, like, well, fine then, you're owed it, but see you later. Like, that's it, done. And now what he did was he threw away a friendship and a business for $2,000 that he spunked in a few weeks to make himself feel better. And then when he came down from that decision, he then regretted it. And now 8 years on, I'm still running the business and getting to a position that we always dreamed of doing it together. And
he probably is kicking himself.
Yeah, I'm not happy that he would be kicking himself or that he wasn't involved. But like that is unfortunately just, you know, you talk about like bringing the energy you have, and unfortunately I do believe in karma, and I do think that like you create your own experience by doing that. And even if he in his own head thought that I was unfair to him and that was the right decision, like if you look at our lives now, like they're very different lives, and they're both reflections of how we behaved in that incident.
Yeah,
interesting way to look at it.
That's true. Yeah, I like that though. You know, like the story of good and evil and how good triumphs. Like I like the idea that if you do good things and you have a good persona and you give good energy, good things will happen to you. I don't know if it's, you know, more of an idealistic view, but like, I really hope that is true.
I think it's true, definitely.
You know what we said earlier about like having your life laid out for you, and I was kind of saying like, I don't think that there's a specific life path this with all the details, but I feel like there's a general direction.
Yeah.
And like we had a mutual level of our trajectory, and an action from his side or my side has now, you know, like the marginal gains, like a decision that was made at 20 years of age. If you now extrapolate that to 10 years on to today, we have completely different lives, and that was just like a small decision. One decision, and obviously it probably wasn't one decision in isolation. His whole life, his decision-making process was implicated by where he was in his mind. So there's obviously other things going on, but him making that decision has sent him on a different trajectory in life, a negative one.
Yeah.
And me coping with it and deciding to do one thing or not do another thing has ultimately led me in a different trajectory. So I do think that you can control your own destiny. And there are going to be things like that are going to happen that are unfair or that are out of your control to a degree. But it's how you then utilize that to carry on.
100%. So what happens next? Because you're going solo at this point and you've got no dough.
Yeah, I wasn't completely solo. So what happened was, I don't want to stitch them up too much, but the student union really wanted us to be like their next generation of promoters, because they'd had all the biggest events in Bournemouth, but those promoters, when they kind of like graduate or they become in their like mid-30s and stuff, they give it up. And then like they have a cycle when they have no promoters, and then the club's in trouble. So they saw us as like the hottest new promoters in the area, and they didn't want us to go to Halo or anything like that. So they were like, we'll pay for your events to keep you here. So we're like, all right, cool. So we did like an event with them, and they paid all the costs, made all the profits, and we get to the end and there was like, I don't know, $3,500 profit or something. And then we're like, okay, cool. So you can send it here. And they're like, what do you mean? And we're like, the profits. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, why would you think that you're getting the money? We paid for it. And I was like, I know I'm a kid, but I'm not stupid. I know how this works. Like, I run the event, I sell the tickets, I get the profit, you get the bar, you get the profit. Like, that's how this works. And they try to take advantage and basically be like, nah, we paid for it, so it's our money.
So we keep all the money. So what am I getting paid for?
And this was the student union who are supposed to be like caring, and their duty of care to the students.
Well, you're not just like, well, what am I doing then? Am I running the event for free?
But then the problem was that they kind of had me trapped because I didn't have no money, and I needed their money now.
They exploited you.
So what happened was I went and found someone else who I actually disliked at the time, but he had money laying around. So I got him as an investor, and what he was doing was he was paying for the events, and then we paid him back the money plus £1 a ticket or 50p a ticket or something like that. and the student union really hated him. And it come this like weird sort of like beef between him, us, and the student union, because they wanted to control us, and I was not willing to do that. I've obviously had like an anti-authoritarian view my whole life, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna go and find a solution. And then his money meant that we could escape the grasp of those guys. And the thing was, I never left Fire Station. Like, I stayed loyal to it. It was just, I didn't like the fact that they were taking that approach. So I wasn't completely on my own at this time. I had like people who worked for me, and then this other guy, he's one of my best friends now. I wouldn't be where I am today without him, because he did so many things, from as little as even facilitating it by offering us the money, to just like, he has got me out of jail a trillion times with like stuff that's gone wrong. And you know, I had a car crash once, and it was on that I can't remember what it was, the M4 or whatever, the one from Southampton to Bournemouth,
M3
maybe, yeah. And I was driving at night, and there's like a little chef, and there's like a
Oh yeah, I know where you are.
yeah, it's all green either side, and there's 2 lanes, and then on the left, out of nowhere, there's like a petrol station and like a little thing. And I was really, really tired, and I was driving home from Southampton with my mate, and my mate loved Future, but Future always made me like drowsy, because it's just so I was like fucking so tired. It was winter, so the heating was on, and I was like proper like, oh fucking
That mongs you out as well.
it does, and I was like really knackered. And I was driving behind this like huge like industrial lorry with like a skip on the back, and like the net that they put over was like flapping open, and I was like, I'm not fucking sitting behind this thing so a rock can come out and smash the window. So I was like, as soon as I get the opportunity to overtake, I'm gonna overtake. And the third lane opened up, so I just put my foot down, went to like 85. I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna take past it, and then within like a split second, the road ended, and it was a turn-in.
Oh no!
And because I was so tired or whatever, I just wasn't able to do the calculations, and I just went instantly into this crash barrier. So I should have just completely died. And what happened was, which is absolutely insane near-death experience, when we hit the curb, my tyres exploded, and the explosion of the tyres lifted the car up in the air and over the crash barrier, and I was in slow motion in the air.
Fucking
then
hell.
I landed, skidded across 3 lanes, and nothing hit me. And it was insane. And then I kind of went blah, 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 into that little sort of petrol station, and I'm like,
Yes, you did a jump.
and I get out, and I'm like, oh my god, my car's fucked. And I get out, there's not a scratch on it, but the tyres are popped. And I call him, and he was at someone's house, like a girl's house or something. He, within an hour, was with me, and he took the wheels off of the person whose house he was at's car on the driveway, drove to me and fitted the wheels on my car so I could drive home. And he's done so much shit like that for me that I would not have been able to just operate
Real
without
one,
him.
mate. Yeah.
100%. So as much as you get people who will fuck you over, which I've had loads, you also get some people who would do anything for you and be super loyal. And I have realised that when you find good people, you need to... I saw a video once, it was like, when you find good people, you just keep them with you.
Hold on.
And like whatever business it is or whatever scenario it is, just find a way to use them like in it, because good people are good people at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we've all got people in our lives that you can always count on.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you just need to call in the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to call in the boys for a few favours.
Like that moment there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, people like that have been pivotal in the journey.
So how does it all play out then? So you're potentially getting to, because of the name, fall out of your friend at that time. I assume you changed the name to Foreverland then?
Yeah, so Foreverland was the new name, which at the time I didn't actually like that much. But in hindsight, it was the best thing we ever did, because Foreverland is actually a brand, whereas Neverland is an existing thing. And it was one of those things in life where you're like kicking yourself, but it actually...
I like Foreverland more.
So much better. So much better. And Neverland was really limited to that like childish concept.
Foreverland's still got the same story as Neverland.
It does.
But it's just bigger. Yeah,
Bigger.
yeah.
And it's almost like never... Even if you look at like language,
Yeah, there's a
like,
negative connotation.
never is like you are not able to.
Yeah.
Whereas forever means ongoing.
There's psychology behind
There's
that.
more of a magic to it.
Yeah.
So it ended up being the best thing that happened. And I was always super, super aggressive in business. So within literally not very long, within the first 2 events, I'd already booked in shows in like 3 other cities.
Yeah.
And my guy, who was the guy who had the money, he was my investor. So I remember he gave me like 30 grand or something to pay for all the shows. And then, do you remember Block Party?
Yeah.
I orchestrated a deal to buy Block Party. So we bought Block Party, we bought Wave, and I was doing Foreverland, and I was doing other stuff. And at this point, I'm like fucking smashing it. And I remember like making fucking bear money, and just everything was killing. And I was on top of the world, had like a sports car, had all the girls, like biggest name on campus. I've got cash.
Enoch.
Yeah, no, I literally was. I always say to people, like, I hate to seem like a dick, but that was how it was.
Yeah,
like it actually was.
I was the Beanock.
Yeah, like you walk down the street and you just know everyone in the shops, in the barbers. People come up to you, like it was the life. I loved it here.
What's that do to your ego in that moment?
God's honest truth. Like I know, back to that thing about like alcohol and drugs, they accentuate like who you make you more of what you are. I actually felt like, because I was actually quite unpopular until I had Foreverland, and I feel like I've always been like one of those abrasive people who, because I have a lot of self-belief, I'm talking a good game. And I think people don't like confidence, but what they will allow is confidence with results, because even if they don't like it, they have to respect it.
And also, when you are like that, the people that you get on with, you get on really well with.
Yeah,
because I have the same. Yeah,
they recognise it. And I remember actually that Foreverland, the first ever one, which was Neverland, was the best night of my life, because my whole demeanour changed for two reasons. One, people now took me seriously, but two, I actually proved myself right. And after that, rather than becoming very egotistical, I actually went the other way and I became really humble. I was actually egotistical until I was successful, and then when I became successful, I went the opposite way and I relaxed, because I always had a point to prove. And now it's like, I don't need to. I've already proven the point now, and I think my ego has got smaller and smaller and smaller ever since then. And people always tell me like, you're crazy humble. Like if I was to like go to a party or meet people, I'd never talk about what I do or my business or anything. I don't bring it up
because you don't need to.
Other people have to be like, oh, but tell him about this, or like, he does this, or what do you do? And I go, oh, I just like run events or whatever. Yeah. And people are like, nah, like it's one of the biggest events in the country. And I'm like, yeah, it's good. We're doing all right. So I had a switch where I was a bit of a piece of arrogant little shit, to be honest, until I actually did something noteworthy. And then I was like, I knew I could do it. And now people can also see it. And I always say that as well to like some of my friends who are not kind of getting the respect they deserve. I'm like, thing is, mate, like your head is here, but your track record is in the mud. And people don't respect. People respect success even if they don't like it. Like there's like, if you come across like a fighter or a boxer or someone who's an absolute dickhead, you don't like him, but like if you think he can bash you up, you respect him because you know the threat. Yeah. I think people see that when they're like, oh, what, he's a bit of a fucking arsehole, but like he is good at what he does.
Yeah. Got respect to
like a Pogba or someone like that. People are like fucking Pogba, they're like, he is unreal.
Yeah, it's true.
I always think that like arrogance is earned. Do you know what I mean?
It should be.
Yeah, but like when someone is like so confident that people perceive them as being arrogant, I'm like, that's because look at McGregor. People say McGregor's arrogant. Like he's done what no one else has done before. Two-time world champion, the boy came from nothing, and no one believed in him, and he made it to the top. How can you even question that level of confidence?
But again, it's that thing that you are speaking from the position of someone who's able to factor in multiple. You have a holistic outlook on life. You can, because you're someone who aspires for success, you can recognize it. Like for example, like you guys play football, right? So I'm a Ronaldo man, right? And obviously there's always that debate about Messi and Ronaldo. Yeah. And I know that like Messi's like the footballer's footballer, whereas like Ronaldo's just the guy.
Yeah.
And like people think Ronaldo's arrogant and stuff, but it's like, mate, like Geezer's smashed it for 20 years and he's got insane goals. And I know that it doesn't necessarily make you a better footballer, but he's done all of that and he's been the celebrity.
He's done the whole lot.
And he's done it in all these countries, whereas Messi just had his head down. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, like, I like big characters. I like charismatic people.
I got converted into, I was always a Messi man, and then only over the last, I've actually gone from Messi to Ronaldo back to Messi, but I was always Messi, and then I converted to Ronaldo just because I started to understand the work that he put in
behind the scenes,
and how much he put into his craft. And I started to see stuff like he's got his own rehabilitation in his house. He's got an centre in his house. look at Messi and just think like he's naturally gifted, whereas Ronaldo has earned it. Like he was always the last one at training. So I became a Ronaldo man, and then after the World Cup, I went back to Messi.
I was going to say, I hope you didn't switch back after that.
I did switch back. I'm not going to lie, because it made me think that I understand what he's done at Man United, but I just feel like him walking down the tunnel when Portugal went out. I just think it just reflects his character as well.
He's petulant.
Yeah, I just think like you don't really have to do that because you are Ronaldo.
That has undoubtedly tainted his reputation.
Makes me like him more.
And also, I tell you another thing that tainted his reputation was because he sat on the Piers Morgan interview, and he asked him about the deal of going to Saudi Arabia, and he said, I wouldn't do it for that because I don't want to do it. Not in it for the money, blah, blah, blah. And then everything happens, and then he moves to Saudi Arabia. I understand it's probably the only offer that he potentially had on the table, but he still went against his word.
You know, like these geniuses, they're always flawed. Like they, you know, whether it's Kanye or Ronaldo, whoever it is, you know, like Gaza, all these people, like to get to that level, to have that talent, you need to have a bit of a wild, crazy streak.
But they're also just humans.
Yeah, of course.
So like, you know, no one's perfect, right? So everyone has like flaws and will have implications. Like, and Ronaldo's is just, he's emotional. Yeah. And why is he emotional? Because he's so passionate.
Yeah.
Like you can't. Yeah, that's one thing you can't. Back to that respect thing. Like he is like one of the most ferocious winners of all time. He is so obsessed with winning that he will do anything it takes. And as much as you think, oh fucking hell, mate, you're like, but that's what you need.
Floyd Mayweather style.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. And especially if they've got a backstory, like who's that defender or whatever who plays for Brighton, who Chelsea and Arsenal were trying to buy.
Cucurella?
No, they already did him. It's like some guy from like Ecuador or whatever. It's happened today. And he's put out a statement, like a sort of a transfer request.
Oh, Sasado?
Yeah, him. So he basically put out a statement being like, I'm like the youngest of 10 kids and my family live in the slums. And like my dream is to be the most decorated Ecuadorian player of all time. But also like I'm providing for my whole family. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that Brighton have given me. But these guys are going to fucking pay me $100,000 a week.
Yeah.
And it's like, he actually... You go, oh, fucking let him go then. Do you know what I mean?
How can you argue it?
Yeah. So there is always that as well. You know,
I think just also being in the limelight for 20 years in itself and trapped within that fame is fucking difficult to deal with. So like, for example, him going on Piers Morgan, you know, he's kept quiet for 20 years. So he's had a lot of time to make mistakes which have been public. So like for him to then go on there and be emotional and talk about, for example, Saudi Arabia, it seems justified.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Because he's been on his best behaviour for 20 years.
But also I think a few opinions got split because of how authentic he was about football behind the scenes, because obviously everyone's so well media trained within the football industry that you don't really get an inclination of what happens behind the scenes with the owners. And I think he said a few things about the United owners that everyone knows happens, but it's not out there.
Also, can't underestimate the matrix of it. Like, these guys are billionaires and they control the media. And like, you don't think like the Glazers can just call up Rupert Murdoch and be like, here's $5 million, just like cane him.
Yeah, it's strange, mate. So let's just pull back on that. Obviously, Foreverland's popping. What happens for you to leave university and where do you go from there?
So I was in my final year of uni and the uni pulled me in and they said, you either have to quit your business or quit uni, but you can't do both. And then I was like, well, fuck you guys. And I just didn't go back into uni really after that. And I still did the course, but I was just like, I'm not on board with that. It's like the classic entrepreneurial suppression thing. And I just doubled down on the business. And then the year that I graduated, I had two, at the same time, weirdly enough, within like a couple of weeks, I had two people approach me with an offer to invest in Foreverland. One of them was in Cardiff and one of them was in London. And the Cardiff guy actually came to me first and I did the deal with him and we started going through it. But he had loads of other stuff going on. And
what does the deal structure look like? Just them give you some cash and then you roll out? And
it was kind of like, I'll give you half the company and you pay for our expansion kind of thing. Because I still didn't have any... I had money in my pocket to live, but I didn't have business money.
And events take money to put on, right?
They do, and also when you're that age, if you make $3,000, I now personally have $3,000, and I just spend it until the next event, because you don't understand the money management and the forecasting.
Cash flow, yeah.
And also, why would it ever stop? Which is why COVID fucks so many people up, because you just assume that everything will always remain or improve, and you don't factor in things that can go wrong. So I wasn't in a position to expand it on my own. And then the guy from London, I'd already done some other stuff with him. Like, he had booked Foreverland for like a few of their events. So I had a bit of a relationship there, and he was out and out events guy, but he was also in London. And I had always had this thing, like we said earlier, about Bournemouth. I love Bournemouth so much, but it's very limiting. There's a very clear ceiling. And at that age, I was like 23. And I remember looking at Bournemouth, like, I'm already killing it here, and I could probably push on for like another 2 years and be literally the biggest thing here. But then I'm going to hit a ceiling and just stagnate, or I can go out of my comfort zone and go for the bigger prize. And at least then, if I want to, I can always come back with my tail between my legs. So I wanted to take that challenge, and I basically said to him, look, mate, someone else wants to do it. But if you give me a job, I'll come to you. And that was my ticket back to London. So I ended up working full time with him and being a business partner. And within a few months, we launched our first UK tour, which was like 21 cities. And it really just went from there, to be honest.
21 cities is hefty. How did that sort of go for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, I completely burnt out. Like, I was a complete workaholic. I still am, but like back then it was just silly. I was super stressed, and it was just a lot. And you're learning so much so quickly. And like, we would, on the Friday, we make $2,000, and on Saturday we lose 6, you know what I mean? And it was like bad patches and good patches. And actually the first show that we had, this is another one of these silly, funny stories. Like, the first event we ever had on our tour, we had it in Bristol, and the venue there, like Bristol, I don't know if you've been out in Bristol, it's a very
Jack used to live there.
I went uni there.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you know Lakota?
Yeah.
So just like proper rough, like
Dirty.
But like, the people who run the whole industry are not professional. Like,
No, they sell nos. They used to sell nos out the back as well. I used to go there and just fucking sesh it up.
We had a show there, and like someone was just laying on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if you know this, but there's like a secret tunnel under the stairs, and like it gets pretty messy in there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you've experienced that, because our first tour date was there, right? And that event was like, I think Lakota's like 1,100 capacity, right? And we sold it out easy, and then the venue were like, oh, we've got like another room, like Coroner's Court or whatever. So they were like, sell to like 1,800. So we sold to 1,800, and they were like, we can also use the courtyard, and so sell to like 2,000 something. And then they were like, there's going to be drop off, and there's other spaces, and we'll put all the toilet. So they were like, sell to 2,700. So we sold to 2,700. I'm on top of the world because my business is going off. I'm going to make like 30 grand, like, it's mental. So we basically turn up, and they just completely mismanaged the whole event. They didn't put the extra toilets in, they didn't put the security in, and there was a queue to get in for about an hour and a half, and it blew up real bad because people were just leaving. People went in, and there's like a little bar room you have to go through before you go into the main room, and people like didn't even make it through the bar room, so they thought it was all a scam. And there was these Karens that basically made this like hate group and started rounding up people who were also at the event and disgruntled, and adding them to this group to make this like big PR machine. Then they went to the local press.
That's the most Bristol thing.
I know, mate. I know. And it's not unique to Bristol though. But they basically got the Bristol Post on board. Bristol Post, there's a guy called Robin Murray, I think he was the editor or the writer. The Bristol Post run like a hit piece on me, and my name was in the articles. They got like 5,000 shares. And then what happened was these Karens then took the articles, and because that was the first day of our tour, they went to the other 20 events on Facebook, which is when Facebook was popping and everything was around Facebook, and they just completely spammed every group, every advert, every event page. They were messaging people who clicked attending on our events.
What's wrong with people?
Sending the article saying it's a scam, they're thieves, it's this, it's that.
How much time do they have on their hands?
Just Karens, yeah. And that really...
Did that ruin the tour?
Yeah, people were we sold out everything, and then we just started having to refund people, keep people kicking off, and we started losing money. But more importantly, it just completely knocked the wind out of my sails, because that brand I've always felt like an extension of me as a person. Because everything from the tone of voice and the artwork and the culture is me. It's just me and what I feel like is the right thing. and it was like a huge attack on me, and that really like had a big impact on my energy levels, my motivation. I was really down for a very long time, and then it's taken us like 2 or 3 years after that to really recover, and we had recovered, and we were coming into like, I think it was 2019.
Are you doing tours all over the world at this point?
No, just the UK.
Well, whilst you're touring the UK as the event owner, what role do you play in it?
On the tour, or just in general?
On the tour. So
well,
what do you do?
Well, I do everything basically, but on the tour, like, you know, we've got to book the venues, book the hotels, book the trains,
security,
like the photographer, the security, like the clubs sometimes take, like, they do the bar stuff and the security and stuff. You do like anything that plugs in on top, but we're traveling up and down, and we've got to do the DJs and, you know, do the decor, and, you know, because our event is just all decorations orientated. But me and my mate, the guy who picked me up when my car crashed and stuff, we would be traveling in the van up to like somewhere 5 hours away, and going up these mad, crazy, dangerous ladders and stuff, like hanging all the decor up. And then we would run the show for like 6 hours, and then at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, we would then climb up the ladders again and be working till 6 in the morning, and then we'd have to go to bed for like 2-3 hours, and then wake up and then drive to the next city.
And the thing is, like, the funny thing is, like, you know that's the case, but it sounds glamorous being a promoter with like an event, but in reality, it's like all the shit in it.
Yeah.
Losing money, no sleep.
Can you even enjoy the event itself whilst it's on?
Well, the event is the only thing that keeps you going. Because
are you behind the decks? Do you get involved in the party at the front?
It's been at different points. I'm definitely not like in the crowd partying. I'm definitely working, and I'm orchestrating the event.
Are you also a bit like nervous because like it's like obviously the penultimate moment, and like there's certain things that could go wrong that could end the whole event, like someone fucking, I don't know, doing too many pills and fucking bugging out, or like a fight with security, or like stuff like that.
I to be honest, I've always been someone who, like, I do like the difficult things well, and like the simple things like not very well. So like I actually don't really get nervous about big events and DJing and all these other kind of things. My nerves have actually come around in the last kind of year or so, like post-COVID, because there's so much riding on it now. Like, we are hanging on by a thread because the whole industry is still reeling from what's happened. And now it's like, whether it's the train strikes or it snows or people are getting killed in clubs all the time, like whatever it is, it takes one thing to not be perfect and the whole thing comes down. And we are desperate for like the tickets we've sold and the money that's scheduled to come to us, forecasted to actually materialize, because it's the difference between having a business and not having a business. And I remember back in April, we had our first event at Printworks, which is arguably the best club in the UK, right? And I genuinely remember being really paranoid that just something was going to happen to make the event not happen, because that's like the peak of my career at that point. And I'm like, it's too good to be true. Like, you know, it's sold out. It's the best club in the UK. Everything's perfect. And I was just waiting for days for it to go tits up.
Yeah.
And luckily it went perfectly. But now, like, I do have a bit more of that now. Now I'm always a little bit sketchy around like the build up to the shows, because I'm like, there's so much riding on it. It's like not life or death, but it's like the difference between, for me, that is my life.
Yeah, and also there's so much more that can go wrong now.
They're bigger, aren't they?
Pre-COVID, you wouldn't have a train strike, or all these things wouldn't be a thing. Well, they'd be a thing, but they would never facilitate. But nowadays, they actually do facilitate, and it is your industry that gets hit.
The worst, yeah. And also, it's, you know, it's people are nowhere near as sociable as they used to be as well. Like when I was trying to say earlier that like there's nothing to look forward to anymore. Like, I didn't mean it as like negatively as that, but what I mean is that people can't be fucked.
Yeah.
People will book tickets and then be like, oh, I can't bother.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? So how, obviously you do this tour, and then does it go well?
Yes and no.
Do you scrape by?
We get through, and then we end up being profitable over the course of 20 shows, but it is completely like draining me to the point where like I'm done out. But it's a massive learning curve. Like, it's still, you know, all these things that happen, they give you
the reps,
character building, and they give you that hardened approach that, you know, they put their heads on your chest.
Yeah.
And after that, what then happened for 5 years is I toured for 5 years, and every year we went from doing like 20 shows to like 1,000 people to now doing like 6 shows of like 3,000 people.
And is this where you start DJing as well?
So I only started DJing after COVID. So
Okay.
basically what happened was I always liked it. Like I remember when I was in Freshers or whatever, I bought one of these little like £100 little controllers and I used to do it in my room or whatever. But it was a realization that like there's a million DJs and like it's so hard to do it. And I've always been able to evaluate opportunities like that. And I'm like, I'm actually an above average promoter. Like I can see that I can go right to the top as a promoter, but chances of me going to the top as a DJ are very slim. So I was able to evaluate that, and I was always loved it, but I never pursued that part of it. And then when COVID came, it was such a distressing time that, you know, I felt in and out of love with the business.
So let's just build up to that point. So you got 5 years of growing the show. So at this point, you've got sort of 5-6 shows a year, but it's...
No, sorry. We were still doing more shows, but like instead of, because we would do a tour, but then we'd also do shows around the year and different things. But rather than doing like 20 shows in a row, I was cutting it down to like year 2, we did 18, year 3, we did 16, year 4, we did 14, year 5, we did 10.
Yeah.
And we were like making them less frequent, but making them bigger. And that was for efficiency reasons. Like I realized that it requires the same amount of work whether you're doing 100 people or 10,000 people. It takes up the same mind share. It's all of it's the same. So you might as well sell more, but do less events, which then gives you more breathing space, less things to think about, less things to worry about, less problems and venues, and
more time to build the show up and everything.
And focus on the finer details. So we had that kind of evolution. And we were also growing as a brand, and we've always had these junctures. Like it seems to be every 3 years we have this flagship event that happens. And I remember London being the capital, it kind of acts as the catalyst for like what happens, how the brand's perceived. And we did our first London shows in this cool little venue called the Clapham Grand, which is like an old sort of like theatre, but it's not like credible, but it's just like a cool old little space. We did 3 shows there, sold them all out. And then in June 2019, we had our first show at Studio 338 in London, which is still one of the best venues in London. But like at the time, that was the Printworks. Like that was the best venue. So like to get in there was like the peak of where you could go. And I remember getting that event and being like, oh my fucking God. And we sold it out in advance. And that was like the next best day of my life after the first ever one. Because I was like, wow. And then what that happens is, and that was like the first time after like 3 years of trauma from the bad tour. Because it was like the tour was awful. It took me like 2 or 3 years professionally and personally to recover from that. And then this was like year 4, and that was the turning point, and everything just started selling out and everything just came back. And we had like 3 years of the not known venue. The 3rd year we did Studio 338, did 3 with them. And then now we had another 3 years, and we're just about to do our 3rd Printworks show sold out. So we seem to have these like junctures like every 3 years.
Evolution of like the event.
And in the next 3 years, all the other cities and destinations you do it in, they catch up to the level that was set in London. And then by that point, you're now ready to take the next step.
Yeah.
So like now in Printworks, we sell 6 and a bit thousand tickets. And now the rest of the country, now in Manchester and Leeds and Newcastle, we now have to go from doing 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. We need to follow the suit.
Catch up.
Yeah. And also partly because you're now, you get kind of addicted to doing it at that level. Like after I did my first ever Printworks show, I was like,
it's the threshold, isn't it?
I don't want to ever do an event not like that again. Like why would I want to go to Bournemouth and do a show when I can do 6,000 people in like this huge globally renowned venue? So it kind of like, and that was the reason I said about the Range Rover earlier. Like when I bought my Range Rover, I was doing it to partly reward myself, but also to continue to incentivize myself through pressure. I wanted to show myself that like keep going. And when you get a taste of it, then everything else seems inadequate. So yeah, it's been 8 years now, and it's always been just like an onwards trajectory, always up, always aggressive, always keep pushing and knocking down doors.
So what happens when COVID comes around? So we get to the point where the shows, you know, we've got Studio 338, things are looking like they're starting to fly again, especially after the shitty tour, just because of the Karens. And then COVID comes about.
Yeah, so we had that show in June. Then we had a tour in Q4, which completely sold out, our best ever run, our best theme. Now we're starting to book like our own festivals and stuff for like the summer 2020. like Foreverland festivals, and there's this video of me in like November, and this like video promoting this fucking show being like 2020's our year, like it's finally happening. And then we get everything's going full steam ahead, and then we suddenly get to the 23rd of March, and now it's lockdown.
Boom.
And now it's all over. And then the conspiracies come in, and I'm just thinking, this is never going to go back. Like, we're never going to be able to socialise again.
Did you think that was going to be the end of Foreverland?
Yeah, I thought, you're looking at it and you're like, it's pretty bleak. Like, we're all inside our houses, and now you think the government's all orchestrated it, and they're trying to kill the ability for people to meet each other and speak, and they don't want anyone to communicate because it's.
Is that where your head was going with it?
Well, yeah, you're on BitChute with like all the conspiracy theories and watching all these videos, and everyone's panicking, and the whole world just goes, "What the fuck is going on?" Yeah. And I remember that first 3 weeks of lockdown was like incredible weather, so it was like you would just not go to work, you would just chill outside in the garden and do whatever, and then at 5 o'clock every day you'd almost like all get popcorn and sit around and watch Boris and the guys come on TV, and it was kind of jokes, to be honest.
Yeah,
like it was this funny weird like film thing, and then it just reached a point where it was like, oh no, this is actually fucked for a very long time, maybe forever.
So where was your actual head at then? Once you've
business wise or just
business wise and personally at that point, because you've gone through one hell of a journey for 8 years with Foreverland, and it's got to the point where you think it could potentially be over.
So I decided to kind of fight fire with fire, and I went like every festival and every event just went silent, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to be beaten by this. So we started launching our own festivals and trips, and the brand was growing massively because we were like one of the only brands in the UK that were like promoting, and at that time, just the idea that you could go out was enough for people to part with their money. So anything you put on was selling out like that. But unfortunately, I underestimated how long the whole COVID saga was.
So were you putting on events?
We weren't putting them on. We were like announcing them and selling them. But then by the time you get to the event, we're still in lockdown.
Oh, it's so annoying.
So then we had to keep giving the money back. But the problem is, every time you give the money back, you're refunding the money you were given, but there's also cost to
stripe fees and whatnot,
to artwork, advertising, videos. So we're spending like, let's say we spend 10, 15 grand to launch an event. We go and make 300 grand, but then we got to give the 300 back, but we've also lost the 15.
Still out of pocket.
And we got an office, and we got this, and we got this, and we got this. And then it was like, fuck, we are going to die unless we want to launch another one. Yeah. So then we launched another one to cash flow us. And now we're 30k in over 2 events, and then that would cancel. And then we're like, fuck, so then we have to launch another one, and we're basically just kicking the can down the road, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul or whatever the saying is. And COVID goes on for 2 years. And by this point, we're just like massively in debt. It comes out of COVID, everyone thinks it's going to be great, and it just doesn't. And then we go and do a tour, and we don't make the money we thought we were going to make.
Did you go big on that tour though?
We did, but it was more like people were still weird about going out. And then even the people that did come out, we had like 30, 40, 50% dropout rate at every event for about 4 or 5 months, where you'd sell 2,000 tickets and you have 950 people there. So then what happens is like, you don't have that sort of
energy and vibe, and
like the consensus in your local town, like that isn't there because not everyone's buzzing about this event. And then when you're in the event, the energy isn't in the room. Yeah. So then it's not even fulfilling. And like I said, you said about like, can you enjoy the event? Like, it's so stressful that actually the event is the only buzz that you get.
Yeah.
And then when the buzz isn't there and you're not making money and COVID's still a thing and everything's fucked, it was just really, really,
tough.
And I was like, I fell in and out of love with it. I was trying over COVID loads of different businesses because I was like, this is finished. And this is what I said earlier about like mourning the life I thought I had. Because I had this amazing business and everything was going to plan. I thought I was going to travel the world and do all this stuff. And now it's all been taken away unfairly. So I had to try and reposition myself and take on more corporate business ideas and stuff like that. And then when we came back out of COVID, I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're still in the mix, but like, I don't have the same like unwavering, burning desire now. Like I've been
lost your momentum.
Yeah, you lose your mojo.
It's momentum. Momentum is the key to life. There's this Donald Trump story where he talks about, you know, the one about basically there's this guy who essentially was the boy of New York. And he was the boy of New York for construction and like literally building properties. His company gets bought out by a hedge fund for like
I can't remember the figure, but it's a billion, like it's in billions. And ultimately they bury the company. And the reason is because he would always sweat the small stuff. But he was so on it that he would like be bagging up certain
like
cement
spare
or
rubble,
and then reselling it and like eating at every angle and just being completely on it. That when the hedge fund buried his company just because they didn't have the same ethos, he bought it back off them. And it turns out he could never regain the momentum and like the business fails again. And I always think about how important momentum has been in my life. And when I had a business that had momentum to then not having the momentum, to rebuild that momentum, not only in the business, but also yourself, is fucking challenging.
So that Studio 338 event was this, I felt like a weight was lifted where it turned the tide and then everything was just selling out. But for 3 years post the tour, we had negative momentum and that was destroying me. And then suddenly you get some momentum again. It's flying, then COVID comes. And, you know, so it's just up, down, up, down, up, down. It's like this really sort of like abusive relationship with the world. Cause, you know, and with the business, and you begin to resent the business. And
did you want to quit at any point?
Yeah, I did. And I tried to quit, but then obviously it's because of the debts and stuff, we had to keep going. So I was reluctantly keeping on going. And we were putting on stuff that I didn't think we should be putting on just because we had to.
Get the bills paid.
And then you're more and more entrenched in it and deeper committed. And I really, really fell out of love with it. And I was just doing it because I was just imprisoned by it, basically. And then I was like, right, if I'm going to carry on, I need to squeeze some more enjoyment out of this. And that's when I decided to do the DJ. Because you get a buzz from that. But I've always been someone who enjoys the game. Like, I like playing the game. Not like a deceiving way, but as in like the attainment game, like the building game of like a business or whatever it is. I like improving. I like seeing if I can make it in something, if I choose to do it. If I apply my mind to it, I believe I can do anything. So I'm like, well, can we then? Let's see what we can do. So I was like, doing the DJing gives me like another game to play within the game I'm already playing, because the game I'm playing is spoiled now, but I need to keep going. So I was like, let me DJ. And then even if I'm losing money at an event, I still get to DJ in front of 2,000 people and have fun. So that's how that started.
So how did the DJing go?
Well, so I started doing it, and obviously I have the luxury of doing it at my own event.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've almost like removed a barrier because you can just utilise your own event.
That's the hardest thing to do, is to get booked. So I now have my own event, and not only do I have my own event, I'm not playing to 7 people that your mate's doing an event at. I'm playing to thousands of people without really knowing what to do and how to do it. And then also what I noticed happened was I started to go from like running the events at the events to like putting more responsibility on my team. And then I became more of like a DJ, and I started like turning up to the events like an hour and a half in and being way less hands-on. And then when the DJs, it was weird because like when I was younger and we used to book all these celebrities and big artists, I used to be like really nervous to like meet them and like a bit shy and like, oh, okay, and like carrying their drinks around from like a fucking loser. And then when I started DJing, I actually stopped doing that, and I actually started speaking to them like really easily, like friends. And then you start to build relationships with them. And then I'm like, okay, well, I've got one of the biggest brands in the country playing some of the biggest events and venues in the country. So I've got the platform, and I've got like 100,000 people follow this page and 70,000. I've got actually an amazing platform. Plus I've got like a direct connection to all of the famous DJs who I can build relationships with, do music with, get them to play my songs, get them to open doors for me with singers and record labels. And then because I book DJs, I know all the managers and the agents. So like I have this really like unique position where I know how the whole business works.
You'd be silly not to.
But this is the thing. Now I'm like, I've got to do it just for the sake of doing it, because it's a waste. And the thing is, like,
you're bang on. Yeah,
I'm like, this is stupid to not do it, because I have everything. Like I have a competitive advantage over 99% of bedroom DJs, because the hardest thing to do is to get listened to and get seen. Yeah. And I have both of those, and I'm able to call up famous DJs and famous agents of people and be like even today, right? Like I'm getting like famous DJs message me saying, because I'm like messaging them like brazenly, like, yo, like I'm gonna book you on some shows, like be good to build a bit of a rapport. By the way, like I've got music, so like do you want to do something together? And like it's leveraging what you've got, because they want to play the shows.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you don't make a song with me you can't play. It's not like that, but it's more like let's
help each other out.
Yeah, exactly. And then because of that, people like put me in the studio and then I speak. And the thing is, when I'm in the studio, I can hold my own. Like, I know how to orchestrate and direct music, and I can.
You've been there.
Yeah.
You've done it all already.
And I just know I've got a good ear. I know what I like. So when all I need to do is get myself in the room, and then when I'm in the room, I can hold my own. And the people who are actually professional musicians are like, no, like, you've got really good ideas and stuff, and you've told us this, and you wrote this, and it's not that hard. But that's now my new game. But that's helped me begin to fall back in love and find the fire in my belly to keep on with the brand, because now I've basically said now I'm gonna DJ until I stop working on this brand, or I will become a world famous DJ and the brand will just either stop or I'll position people to run it. But I actually don't care about being a famous DJ. Like, that's not what I'm trying. I'm not desperate to do it. I'm literally just having fun and seeing if I can do it just for bands.
I feel like that's, sorry to interrupt you. I feel like that in itself will make it happen.
Yeah. It serves you well, doesn't it?
It's like the podcast. We talk about it all the time. Like, everyone's like, oh, what's your goal of it? What are you looking to achieve? Who's your audience? So, like, to be honest, mate, I just fucking like sitting down with lads that I really like, enjoy spending time with. And if that was it, that would be it. And that would be enough.
Yeah.
Which then positions you in a nice way to like not force it.
You know, like they say, like, when you go to, like, you're trying to interview for a job and you have like 10 interviews and then you get offered one, but you go to one, like, you've already been offered the job today, but you committed to the interview, you didn't want to be rude. That interview, you don't give a fuck, and they offer you the job because you're not trying too hard.
Or like when you're dating birds, and like,
it's not true. Yeah,
you know the score. Like, if you're dating, a couple girls, and you're not a girlfriend, and you meet a new girl, you're not bothered. It just puts you in, like, it just gives you leverage, puts you in a better position.
Yeah, and every single time I've ever cared, I've always been mugged off.
Yeah, standard, mate.
I've always been mugged off.
Put too much in, and then you just don't get anything out. But like, if you just go into any situation with leverage, you just get a better outcome.
Or just the willingness to walk away. Like,
that's exactly it.
You either have leverage or you just have the ability to not really care, not take it too seriously. And I think sometimes you can make mistakes because you're taking it too seriously. And with the DJing thing, I actually genuinely believe that I can make it. But I also don't really care that much. Like, I'm not going to be disappointed if I don't, put it that way, because I have my other business. And even on like the music side of things, I don't need to make money out of being a DJ.
Also, the fact that you're going to be a DJ, even if it didn't work out, the relationships you've made will support the business. Yeah. So it's like
a win-win.
Yeah.
If I grow as a DJ, it will benefit my business. But now also I'm able to form, like, for example, I'm doing an event at Printworks on the 1st of April, and I decided the other day that I want to do an after party. Come.
Should we go?
We
it's
have
April Fool's Day. You got to come. Yeah,
all right, we're
it's
in.
Also,
we have to.
Printworks is closing down like 3 weeks later. So
we don't rave anymore. So this will be
Have you been to Printworks?
I haven't, but this will be us coming out of retirement.
Yeah,
I've had a long retirement.
this is like the biggest thing you can do in the UK right now. Like, it's massive. So I decided the other day that I want to do an after party.
Sick.
Right? So I've got a car for the after party. And then I've just called, like, the headliners on the show and be like, do you want to come play the after party? And 3 of the headliners like, yeah, cool. Not even charging me money.
That's what I'm saying.
But that is like, and like, I've got like other DJs who I'm booking them and I've got a relationship, and he's like, come to Miami with me, like, come to Ibiza with me, just because we both know that, like, we're both benefiting from this somehow, but it's not like I'm using you. It's more like we're in this together, and it's a lot easier. I think this has also come off the back of COVID as well, with a lot of people in my industry, like event organisers and promoters. There's always been a lot of rivalry. Like, for example, like, do you know Ty, obviously?
Yeah.
Do you know Ben Reynolds?
Yeah.
So they were like kind of rivals, and now they're fucking best mates. They run businesses together, and they had to build that because of COVID. They were like, well, by survival, really.
Yeah,
like, we can't beat them, join them. Like,
we can't keep going against each other.
It makes more sense for like event owners to work together anyway.
Yeah.
Like from an outsider's perspective, because it's just like, although you have rival nights, like, there's enough pie for both of you to eat.
Especially if you coordinate it. So, for example, there's been so many times where me and you both have an event on the same night, and they're both 1,000 people, and there's only 1,500 people going to come out, so we're both going to lose. Whereas if I go, look, you do Friday and I'll do Saturday. Like, but the thing is, that takes so much you have to lose your ego to do that,
Yeah.
because one of you has to go to the other one first and say, look, isn't it not just more sensible if we tell each other what we're doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the good things that's come out of COVID is people way more willing to like collaborate now and stuff. And that's the same thing, like, especially as a musician, it's actually a pretty hard life, because the chances of you being a successful musician are next to none. And actually what I've really realized is the only hope you really have, other than being like a once in a generation talent, is relationships. And most of the people I know are where they are because of relationships. And back to that thing we said earlier about some of these really big famous DJs, a lot of them have established their reputation and their network because they were willing to like really party for 10 years straight, and they know everyone. And like, if you ever like see like the biggest new DJs, they usually were just kids that were doing like a season in Ibiza, and they're around people who love that music, so they build friends, they build a bit of a support, a following, and they're alongside peers who also end up being big DJs, and then they party, their best mates with one of the biggest DJs in the world, but to them they were both kids, and then they just go up at the same time. And sometimes you have to, I've always seen that it's very difficult to break into those circles unless you are there with them.
Yeah. Also, there's a cliche saying of it's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's so true. It is so true.
I reckon that is even more prominent in the music game as well.
100%.
Just because, like, you know, anyone could do music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not anyone can get in the room, like you were talking about earlier, with the right agent, with the right, you know, DJs, the right fucking promotional companies, everything that comes with it.
I always think, like, let's say at the time Usain Bolt was the fastest man on the planet, right? He wasn't the fastest man on the planet. He was just the fastest man that we knew of.
Yeah.
Like, there was someone somewhere who's faster than Usain Bolt.
Do you think there was?
1,000,000%. Like, when I was a big Anthony Joshua fanboy, right? And I was like, you know, there's someone somewhere who could beat the fuck out of Anthony Joshua easily.
Do you think, though, there's someone somewhere at that time who could beat the fuck out of him? Or, sorry, going back to Usain Bolt thing, I don't know if there's someone somewhere at that specific time that's faster than him, or is there someone somewhere who put the same effort in that he has done that would be faster than him?
But this is the difference, right? So I believe that there is always someone bigger and better in every single thing on the planet. It's just Anthony Joshua is like a good-looking 6'7", like bodybuilding model, poster boy, and it serves. He's marketable, whereas like, you know,
Ruiz, for instance.
Yeah, Ruiz.
Look at someone like that.
Yeah, like, and he beat AJ, but like he ain't a pretty bloke, right? And those are still people who even decided. You know, that sometimes you see like videos of like street fights, and there's guys who like just take on. Obviously, you would have taken on 5 to 10 over in Singapore, but like, there's guys who just like bang people out, or even, I don't know what if it was like a rapper or a footballer. Can't remember who it was. Bugsy Malone. His house got robbed.
Yeah, and he beat them both
and
up.
He threw one punch and he broke both the guy's jaws.
Yeah.
He punched one guy and his arm followed through and knocked the other guy out as well.
He's a bad boy.
Yeah, he's a bad boy. But the thing is, if he decided to do boxing instead of music, he might end up being a world champion. So some people just, especially in athletics, people are just naturally athletic until they find a sport that seems like it's going to be the one that works.
Yeah, also like athletics, there's no money in it unless you're at the top of the game. So like not a lot of people take it forward as like a progressive career. So there probably is just some random geezer, don't know, who's just like in Jamaica, absolutely rapid, who could potentially beat Usain Bolt in a sprint. It could be there,
True.
Or even, you know, the other thing as well, which is definitely true, is there was probably a kid that Usain Bolt could just never catch in his own village, but that kid just didn't live the life or wasn't there on the day that the scout was there. So it's about timing as well, and luck and work ethic and stuff like that. And I know like boxers, they always say like, I live the life, or he doesn't live the life, and sometimes that's the difference.
Yeah, mate, 100%. Look at Paddy the Baddie, mate. He does not live the life, mate. Literally just eats and eats.
Well, McGregor as well.
Yeah, McGregor, you know, fucking Scotch and whatnot. Yep. But obviously, just to pull back on the story, with the DJing, obviously, do you just, at this point, were you just DJing at your events?
Yeah.
How did that then sort of move forward from that?
So, I mean, this is all still quite new because it was only September, the years are all flying by now, 2021. So this September coming out of COVID. And I was just playing like the first like 45 minutes of my own events, and it wasn't pretty, like it wasn't good. But I've always thought like, you know, learn on the job, like throw yourself into the deep end, and you make a few like really embarrassing errors and stuff, but you learn from it.
Everyone's pinging anyway, so it don't really matter.
Yeah, well, not at the start, because at the moment
they're all proper judgmental.
they're like abundantly sober and like,
Oh god.
yeah, and it's like fucking hell, and it's really embarrassing, to be honest, when you get it wrong. It's like the whole world, you want it to swallow you up. It's like missing a penalty or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just, you know, started picking it up, started getting a bit more confidence, gave myself an hour, and then I made some changes to the business, and then I started giving myself like the second slot, because it's actually that first slot is actually the hardest slot to play, because you can't play bangers. You have to play music that's like ambient and like builds people in, but you find yourself holding back.
I've never thought of it like that, but now when I do think about it, when I've been to an event, there is never bangers at the start.
There shouldn't be.
When we used to go, they weren't really.
We never turned up at the start, mate.
But like,
no offense.
No, but I mean, for instance, at festivals, went to festivals. There's never the outrageous bangers at the start of a festival.
Well, they say
on the day.
They say there's like the art of the warm up DJ, and it's like a professional etiquette thing that, like for example, if MK's playing after me, I cannot play any of MK's songs, because that's a liberty. He may not have even played his own song, but I can't fucking play his song before he plays it. And it's the same, like you're not supposed to absolutely rinse bangers like too early in the night, because it fucks up the vibe of the rest of the night.
You're basically the Scottie Pippen for
Michael
Jordan, isn't you? You're the setup, like
but that's what it is. It's almost like, you know, being in a recruitment company and you've got to fucking source the deals, do all the work, and then someone else just makes the commission. But then after 6 months or a year, you become the closer.
Yeah.
And then after that, you become the director who doesn't even have to talk to no one anymore. So it's the same in the DJ thing. You have to earn your stripes and move up. And also like building relationships. If you just slam bangers, like the people who then do play after you are not going to rate you.
And it's your event as well. So even if you do that, it's going to make the event worse.
And I've also done that accidentally as well. Like not like pure bangers, but like playing too hard or too heavy or too fast. And you see that like the energy early on is unreal, but then it tails off earlier than it should. And the clubs are not as busy at the end of the night and stuff. So again, that's a lived experience. And then like Printworks, I played Printworks to 5,000 people, and that was like the 7th time I've ever DJ'd or something. And I didn't even practice or rehearse really, and luckily it just banged. But I do things that people would find unbelievable. Like I take on massive tasks and don't really deepen that much, but like small things, I sweat the small things. And then obviously now being a DJ, the other thing is you can't really be a successful DJ unless you have songs. So you have to make music.
Producing.
Unless you're DJ EZ, which happens once a generation, where he's just there because of how he does it. And that requires like a mad skill level anyway. The only other way to even be recognised is to make and release songs and stuff like that. So I've then over the last 18 months dived into that side of things, which I can't sing and I can't play any instruments, but I know how music should be. So you're then learning new skills, and you're trying to like put a different hat on and be in a different environment. And that's been really enjoyable as well, because now I feel like I'm trying to bring like an idea in my head to life, and you're trying to get closer to the idea. And then you make a song and then you hate it because it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. And then as time goes on, you get closer and closer to producing the product, the output that you really were hoping for. And now I've also decided, because people don't believe it, I'm actually quite shy as well, and I don't tend to ask for much from people. And now with my girlfriend and other things, also the fact I'm a bit like off the back of COVID and everything else, I've got a bit more of like a fuck it attitude now. And I'm now like willing to ask the shameless question. So I'm like messaging like massive DJs like, do you want to make a song with me? And obviously like there's no way in hell they're going to want to do it to just a random guy who has no music out, who's got 4,000 Instagram followers.
But you have a platform.
But they all say yes because they know what the benefit is. And I've never taken advantage of my position in my life, but now I am, but not in like a detrimental way to anyone else.
No, because everyone benefits. And also it's like, don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, 100%.
So like, fuck it, why not?
I've got a song. There's a girl I know who's doing really well in the music industry, lovely girl, and we kind of became friends. We met at a social, an industry event. We became friends, started chatting, and I was like, oh, I'm making music now. Like, oh, can you like sing on it for me because she's a singer. And she like sent me a song. She didn't really need to do that, but she did anyway. And then I like kind of gave her some sets and I help her out in other situations. And then she then introduced me to a friend of hers who was a really accomplished singer who's on like some big records.
You're gonna name drop or not fancy?
I mean, you may not know it because it's like that guy. The girl was called Camden Cox, but the guy's called Stevie Appleton. And like you wouldn't necessarily know he's not like a celebrity, but he's got like 2 or 3 million streams a month on Spotify, and he's on like tracks that you would know the words to, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was about to sing one then, but that's not happening. So
Do it.
so then
Do it.
no chance.
Come on, I don't know what he
I
is.
can't sing at all.
Come on, man.
No, I'm tone deaf. But yeah, so he but he charges like thousands of pounds to sing on a song, but they did a session with me for free.
Sound.
Because she was like to him, he's a good guy and he's doing this, he's doing that, like, and you know, I like him, like, let's just, you know. And I was trying to get hold of him for ages, and then she just came in and was like, should we all just hook up and do a session? And he was like, yeah, cool. And like he's charging other people to do a session, but we just jammed it. And at the end he was like, mate, this is a banger.
Nice.
And it's like, you know, you just need the opportunity, but that opportunity only came because I did something nice for somebody else and then they returned the favour.
But also that opportunity came because you've had your a successful brand and event for 8 years.
You know what I said earlier about
so
like,
you've worked the opportunity over the course of all those years.
I'm now beginning to reap the rewards of 8 years of this brand, but also the early days in Croydon, 10 years and all the sacrifices I made. I'm now beginning to realise how to utilise those more. And the biggest switch for me has been relationships, because I'm a lot less single-minded now, and I understand that like if I help you as a good person, you should help me back. And if you don't, it didn't hurt me to help you anyway.
Yeah. And also it's like you should just it's so funny because me and my friend were talking about something literally yesterday at the shisha, and we're saying about something that someone did for someone we knew. And we were both saying how I won't go into details, but like we're both saying how could you not do that for that person? And we're saying it's weird that people would actively not do that for someone when it doesn't really affect them and it really helps the other person. Yeah. And we were both sat there like, people are just weird that don't help people when they can.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
100%. I mean, my girlfriend, she's a sick DJ actually, and she's playing our Printwork show, and she's got this like guy who is in the industry, and he basically replied to her post announcing that she was playing, being like, oh yeah, I'll come backstage with you and blah 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 blah. And then she like
you've
realized,
got not a chance.
well she also she was like, he hasn't even liked the post, commented on the post. He hasn't done anything to support me. It's not like he didn't see it. He replied to the post to her asking for something, and people are just weird.
Yeah.
They are, and people do feel, you know, that they're unhappy if you've got something that they want, and even if you're doing something completely unrelated to them, but you're doing good and they're not in a good place, they're weird as well. So yeah, it's, especially in this industry as well, it's very like dog eat dog. There's a lot of like fake people because they know that if they're polite to you in person, it might open a door. And you need people to come on the journey with you. So like people don't want to be rude or off to someone in case it is one less person that might help them get somewhere.
Strange, mate. It's fluent in most industries, but I bet in like the entertainment world, it's even more present. And I can imagine there's so many egos with it that like when people do good things, it's difficult to judge whether it's with good intention sometimes.
Yeah.
But I guess obviously that brings us like full circle to where we're at today, right? So we've got Foreverland, the music. Obviously, in terms of where you're at as a person, what is next for you as an individual? Are you going to release an album?
Yeah, so as a musician, I've got, I don't know, like I've got about 18 songs. Most of them are not very good. There's about 8 that could be decent. There's about 6 that are almost done, and there's probably 1 or 2 that I'm like, they're actually good enough. And again, I have the benefit of the ears of like people who run like record labels and stuff, because I can just chat to them and they'll tell me like, you know, if it's gonna work, or not if it's gonna blow up, but as in if the people who make those decisions give you direct feedback, then at least you can find out. So I'm definitely going to be releasing music as soon as possible. And again, just investing further. And I've started getting bookings for shows that are nothing to do with my brand now as well, and in different countries and other places. So as soon as I start releasing music, that just takes it to the next level. But yeah, really in my personal life, I've obviously been under a lot of pressure for a long time, and a few things have happened that have really like changed my life in a way for worse and also for better. And I'm at kind of a point now in my life where I just want peace. Like I just want things to just work how I want them to work. And I'm not really bothered about like, you know, kudos and recognition and fighting and competing. Like I just want to do stuff that makes me happy and stuff that I'm not at a point like I do not want to do anything that doesn't make me happy, like at all. And that applies to relationships, business, everything. I just want to be happy, and I just want to be healthy. And the decisions I make now are all kind of based on what implication that's going to have for the future me. And I really want to get into a position where I'm just free to be creative and do what I want to do. And if I do want to not wake up on a Tuesday and get out of bed, then I want to be able to do that. But if I do want to just go to Bali or go to Tulum for 3 weeks, I want to be able to do that. And that's always kind of been how I've been. But I guess I'm at like a point now in my life where I'm a bit sick of the UK and I'm a bit sick of how things are. And I'm like, fuck this. I just want to grow my hair out and just like go and sit on the beach. And I'm just like, fuck it, I can't bother anymore. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I hear ya.
What about Foreverland as a brand? Because that's where you're at. But what about the actual business itself? Where do you want that to get to?
Yeah, well, so I set it up. I had my business partner who snaked me. Then the other guy came in with the money, and he became my business partner. We went on a journey. Then when I graduated uni, the investor in London, he came in on the business for 5 years. And then back in September, I brokered a deal for him to leave the business and sell his shares to a new company. So I'm the consistent force that I'm like, I believe in my heart of hearts that this is like a global brand. And I've always believed that. And I've always thought that this is, when I first set out, I was like, this is going to be the biggest event on the planet. And over time and COVID, I kind of lost that drive. But now I'm like, no, fuck it, come on, just like keep going. And obviously having new business partners gives you a bit of like a new rejuvenation.
Mate, I'm going to leave it on that. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. And I'm really rooting for you, mate.
Thank you.
I think I genuinely believe you've probably said it yourself, but you'll probably end up making it as a big time DJ, mate.
Fingers crossed. I mean, like I said, I'm really not that bothered in my heart of hearts, but I do really enjoy it. And now I'm getting better at it. It's again like a competitive thing as well. Like I want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's my lifeline that's making me continue with my business. So whatever happens, I'm beginning to enjoy the process a lot more, and settle back down after COVID and recover. And it's that turning point started happening now. So hopefully onwards and upwards, and hopefully no more disruptions.
I'm sure it will be, mate. Thank you so much for coming on, Connor.
Yeah, I just want to mimic what Cal said. Obviously, I'm rooting for you, but like I don't feel like I need to root for you because I feel like you're doing it already, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But obviously, where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram. My @ is this is Conor. But
Is that your DJ name?
Conor, CONR. I had like when I was, it's honestly coming up with a name of a business or a brand or a DJ name is like the hardest part of doing it. And I had like 3 or 4 stupid names, and I was like, this is just embarrassing. So I was like, you know what? Because I'm kind of saying like I'm not like devout going to be a DJ, and that's my whole life. I want to be who I am myself and do the DJing on the side. And I was like, I don't want to make like a DJ Instagram and stuff. I just want to have my own Instagram and show my own life, but then do the DJing on it. So I was like, let me just be Conor, but just like put like a bit of a branded thing on it, and I just abbreviated it to CONR. So yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram, but beginning to spread into other channels.
And the event is 1st of April for Foreverland?
Yeah, so Foreverland's the brand. The show is at Printworks in London, which is 1st of April, and that venue's closing down in May. So that's like one of the last opportunities people will ever get to experience it. And then we've got like events in Amsterdam. We've got events like all over different countries coming up. So yeah, we're just pushing on, and we're trying to keep doing amazing parties.
And when's the album out?
Well, I've got to make there's some rogue songs in it at the moment. But, yeah, hopefully the music starts coming out in the next like 3 to 6 months. But let's wait and see. It's a long process because you think it's good and it's not necessarily good.
Yeah, fair. All right, sound, mate. But look, really appreciate it nonetheless. And yeah, it's been sick, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me.